a criminal justice system, but how does one find a healthy way to channel that anger in trying to cope, trying to deal with the grief associated with losing a loved one?
Well, as I said before, in this situation, is definitely needed the assistance of mental health professional that provides grief therapy, because just professionals are people who are trained to help you to pass through all this situation that you are facing. And people can start to change some negative coping mechanism for some healthy coping mechanism, like, for example, exercising, venting about how their feelings to people that they trust, improving their habits of eating habit or sleeping habit. Try to keep a healthy routine.
But Ms. Gonzalez, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, many people find it embarrassing to seek the necessary help. Many people do not want to do that simply because they feel as though they're making themselves vulnerable for the opinions within society. People do not, in the most polite way, people do not necessarily want to visit a psychologist because of the thoughts that they have of embarrassment associated with such.
Well, that is a myth that people have. And I think we have to, change that stigma of therapy just for people with mental health issues, because therapy is for all. Is to help us to pass through challenges in life and also for personal growth. So even if you said that people don't want to attend therapy, I will say that I should insist that in this case is very important.
What are some of the more pertinent options that are available in terms of treatment? Is counseling just one part of it, but are there other treatments or forms of assistance or help that is available for these individuals to subscribe to?
Yes, it could be trauma-focused therapy to help you to deal with the impacts of a critical incident. There's also, as you say, grief therapy. And for some people, the combination of spiritual help and therapy is also that help, especially people who believe and practice a religion.
In terms of the physical aspects, how grief and loss manifests its way physically, what are the treatments associated for such? Because again, I don't know if there are concerns in respect to a length of time one may face dealing with this situation. I don't know if it's alarming, and I'm hoping you can respond to this, that if an individual is seeking counseling or still facing severe symptoms or signs of grief and depression years after they've lost someone, if that is something that doctors find very concerning.
You meant that a year after?
Well, not just a year, like a few years, 2, 3, even 4 years, because I'm not saying that there is actually any timeline as such. Everyone grieves differently, but I don't know if there are points where doctors will feel rather concerned that there is no progress in terms of getting better.
Okay, yeah. In that case, some people might need to receive medication that can help, because it could be underlying depression that needs some medical assistance. So with the medication, they can get some support to try to come back to normality. But definitely, we have to understand that also when you experience grief, it affects your functioning in different areas, and the idea is that you can try to go back to function, right? And to stabilize your emotions. But it's definitely something that you will never forget.
Is there a particular way one should grieve? Are there ways that you would advise people on how to grieve?
No, just, but I think that remembering and respecting the loved one is a way that can help you with the healing process, especially when you practice some traditions for to say goodbye to the person we love. That also helps with the process of healing.
Do different age groups grieve differently?
Yes. In children, you will encounter that some of them, they don't understand what is death when they are very small. They think that it's not something permanently. Sometimes they believe that the person is just sleeping and eventually wake up. So in terms of children, some of the children don't have that concept established yet, understood yet about what is death. But the ones who lose people that they love and they understand that they lost, some of them can wet their bed, become aggressive at school, don't want to do homework, be oppositional and defiant at home, biting nails, start to behave like if they have a younger age and younger stage in their life, for example. And with teenagers, you can observe maybe self-harming, isolation, lack of interest in activities, eating and sleeping disorders.
So then how would you advise family members, close relatives, friends to actually help a loved one, assist a loved one during this period of grief and mourning?
Being there, just being there next to the person, around the person, being an active listener with no judgment. Don't tell the person forget about it or that already happened. You have to validate the people's feelings, telling them, okay, this might be a very difficult situation. I understand that you might feel so sad and angry about the situation. Okay, so try to show that empathy and active listening and being a practical help. So, for example, when the people is doing a funeral and all that process, being a helping hand to assist them with what they need.
Oftentimes, do psychologists actually see where individuals actually heal and gain a sense of closure when dealing with a situation like this? Is that something that psychologists see happening often, or is it just a lot more difficult to process?
It happens. It happens. People can overcome the feelings, as I said before. The grief and this, let's say, the feeling of sadness of losing someone and miss this person is something that will always happen. It's not that, okay, you are now going to forget that this person was in your life. No, it's not about that. But you can have a healthy relationship with yourself when you accept the situation that inevitably happen. But yes, people can overcome grief.
Well, my final question to you, it's very simple. Trinidad and Tobago is facing a lot of grief, experiencing a lot of grief and a lot of anger. In closing, what advice or final words of encouragement, a message would you like to share with our viewers this morning?
Yeah, I want to say that if you experience that you are not alone, there's always ways to get support from friends, for family, for spiritual leaders, for trained psychologists. On grieving, don't underestimate your feelings, don't hide your feelings, don't be afraid of seeking for professional help. Also, remember to try to keep positive coping mechanism, do sports, pray, eat healthy, try to sleep in the hours, enough hours on the day, try to share your feelings and not be alone, try to spend time with the people that you love. And even if the situation will be painful, in some moment you can find release and peace.
Well, Ms. Gonzalez, thank you so very much for joining us on the program this morning. Thank you for the time that you've given and the advice that you shared with those viewing. Like I said, we are experiencing a lot of grief and anger, so we always appreciate any opportunity to have a conversation that could assist in those dealing with such. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the very best. Grayson Gonzalez, the Public Relations Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, bilingual psychologists, joining me on AM Prime this morning. I think it's very important to understand that there is no right way or correct way to grieve. In fact, everyone grieves differently. Everybody deals with these situations differently. But it's very important to understand and to recognize the support systems that exist. And to friends and family members whose loved ones are dealing with this situation, you can be, or you should be their biggest support system. Ladies and gentlemen, we all need each other. We all need each other. We all need to help each other. I think that at this point in time, we need to start understanding that, learning that, recognizing such. Let's take a break here on the program. When we return, we'll get into some more conversations. We'll be right back.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
It's been a while since we've actually had regional updates here on AM Prime. In fact, the other day, in conversations with my colleagues, we were all wondering what's the latest in respect to the situation in Haiti. Just a month ago, heads of governments around the Caribbean were actually, called emergency meetings to try and deal with this situation to see how best CARICOM can assist Haiti. Now, this actually follows the resignation of President Ariel Henry. There is said to be a temporary government that is ready to take its position in Haiti, trying to deal and stabilize the country. But let's get an understanding first about the most powerful and notorious gangs in Port-au-Prince. The G9 gang, family and allies as well, is led by Jimmy Cherizier, also known as Barbecue. Now, recently he spoke to a British news corporation, and let's see what he had to say about the situation in Haiti.
He's not responsible for all the violence sweeping across Haiti's capital, but be under no doubt he's at the center of it. His fighters are never far.
Because it was an open road when I was last here.
Yeah. Jimmy Cherizier, universally referred to here as Barbecue, is the head of one of the most powerful gangs in Port-au-Prince. But he's also the head of a gang consortium that's brought Haiti to its knees. He took us through the roadblocks of buses they've put in place to stop police raids on his territory. That territory now extends over one of the city's main roads, an economic highway he controls in its entirety.
Tout côté on regarde là quand nous simbralé, on va faire gros route là parce que chaque a rencontré avec simbralé m'a passé bande. Mais tout en l'air tout côté on regarde net yo, on s'excuse monsieur. Tout côté on regarde le net yo, tout ce territoire.
All the way to the bridge?
Yeah. On se nous voulons nous passer là, nous passer là, nous avons moun tout devant, nous avons l'autre négazam qui tout devant.
Barbecue sees himself as a revolutionary for the people, and he rails against corrupt politicians and oligarchs. He dismisses all the efforts underway here to form a transitional council that will govern Haiti. But for the first time, he's told Sky News he would consider a ceasefire and talks if his people are represented. This is significant.
Nous croyons dans le dialogue. Nous pour dialogue, nous toujours prôner pour un dialogue. Mais groupe moun sa qui la classe politique ça qui là, yo pas là pour dialogue. Raison parce que yo pas porte Haïti dans cœur ou même genre avec nous. Classe politique qui là y a fait une exclusion côté que y a dit bandit, nèg azam baladan. Mais son façon pour renouveler le système Jean Lia parce que le système il vient dans bout li. Et écart qui gagne entre les riches et les pauvres en Haïti en li trop. Dans le monde entier il y a un écart entre les riches et les pauvres. Mais Jean le fait en Haïti est indécent. En nous prêt toute solution depuis c'est haïtien qui sous table. Nous même nous prêt pour nous chita parler avec tout le monde parce que ça qui passe dans le pays là nous pas fiers.
I suppose though for talks to take place the weapons would have to go down.
Et zami yo a bien pour yo baisser, les pour yo baisser. Dans moment nous pas arriver dans phase pour nous baisser zami yo parce que moun qui là yo pas vle tendre la raison. Nous avons plus passé 2 à 3 ans depuis que nous avons prôné un dialogue, depuis que nous avons demandé pour tout le monde chita sous table pour nous dialoguer avec monsieur qui gagne zami yo. Personne ne va vle tendre nous. Et je dis à nous venons une situation côté que nous pas avancer, nous avons un objectif non clair.
While this is a major development, he worryingly predicts that the fighting is far from over.
Pas rien qui calme. Et les gouvernements faut qu'on qu'il est pour avancer, qu'il est pour replier. Je pense que chaque jour passé, nous avons utilisé une nouvelle stratégie pour nous capables d'avancer. Pas rien qui calme. Et dans le jour qui vient là, on va le plus mal que Jean est là. Parce que tout autant, nous pas jouer un bout de système ça. Tout autant, ils n'ont pas choisi de mettre tout le monde sous table là. Tout autant vivre ensemble sous table là. Pour nous venir, pour nous chita, pour nous parler. Tout autant nous pas de représentants nous. Parce que je dis, conseil présidentiel 7 mois, ça nous pas de représentants nous. Nous pas de représentants nous. C'est le même système qui va le régénérer encore pour continuer tout pisi monde qui dans le quartier populaire. Je dis, il faut nous représenter. Et là, nous représenter, nous sommes là pour nous défendre droit nous et que nous sommes capables de dire, OK, nous chita. Et nous faisons partie de solutions, qu'on a ensemble continuer à solutions pour payer la paix. Mais tout autant nous pas sous table là, payer ça pas jamais en paix.
Inside his territory, despite the poverty, life is relatively peaceful and organised. Unlike in much of Port-au-Prince, queues for food barbecue gets brought in are orderly. Usually it's chaos. But here people wait knowing that there are enough supplies for the whole community. This is a source of barbecue's strength. To the outside world, he may be a gangster, but here he's a sort of Robin Hood.
Well, we're right in the heart of barbecue's gangland territory, and I have to say the atmosphere here is very different to large parts of the rest of Port-au-Prince. It's much more chilled, much more relaxed. There's aid distribution, it's not chaotic. What the sense you get from this is that people feel safe inside here. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. Here, this is much more like a normal town, if you like.
Watched on by his well-armed and battle-hardened soldiers, Barbecue says that plans for an international force led by Kenya to impose peace in Port-au-Prince will lead to more violence, whoever is in charge of it.
The last time we met, you said if a foreign intervention was to happen here, poor people would die in the fighting. There is talk of it being Kenyans coming. Could you do business with them?
Si Kenya est venu, premièrement, ils vont venir faire massacre dans le quartier populaire parce que oligarques avec politiciens pour l'orienter vers le quartier populaire sous prétexte qu'ils viennent décider tirer bandits, sous prétexte qu'ils viennent décider tirer gang, ils vont entrer dans le quartier populaire et que pour venir faire massacre. À ce moment-là, nous-mêmes qui avons des armes, nous ne pouvons pas quitter ça. Mais je dis à des choses qui ont évolué. Je dis à depuis les militaires kenyans sont entrés, ou bien les policiers kenyans, whatever, l'autre policier qui est entré, nous avons considéré comme des agresseurs. Nous avons considéré comme des envahisseurs. Et je dis à nous ne pouvons collaborer avec aucun envahisseur, aucun agresseur qui vient sortir pour passer l'indépendance pays nous en papier. Nous avons continué de toute façon.
The road Barbecue now controls is all but deserted. The signs of battle, the burnt-out cars and the deserted buildings, are the visual signs of uproot.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do have more updates to share with you on Haiti, but in due course. Let's take a break here now. We'll welcome our second set of guests in a moment, but we'll be right back after this.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we're different criminals and we manipulated the law and we're exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. So my next conversation focuses on equity, inclusivity. I hope I pronounced that correctly, actually. It's a bit of a tongue twister sometimes. But the point is, we have these conversations all the time, but what is being done about it? What is actually happening? What are the efforts being made? The point is, we actually have young people stepping up. And in doing so, we've had 4 individuals who have co-authored a book, Juanita, it's in bilingual actually, Spanish and English, targeted at migrants who are just trying to learn a bit more about our culture. As one co-author said, we grew up with Republic readers, Boyo and Carla. Those were the days indeed. But they don't have any material, they don't have anything. So the initiative was to assist in that particular dilemma, and in doing so, Juanita was born. Let me welcome co-author and interpreter Rain Alfonso. She's one co-author. Hello, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. And Mr. Jesse Buendia Ragbert. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Oh, good. So, how are you guys doing? Welcome to the program.
We're great. How are you?
So let me start with you, Jesse, and I'm starting with you on purpose.
Sure.
Because I want to know, as I mentioned, one of your co-authors said there is a gap when it comes to education here in Trinidad and Tobago for Spanish-speaking migrants. I use Spanish-speaking because there are so many from different parts of the world that come to TNT. That being said, did you guys find it difficult at all to piece together this material for the benefit of migrants?
You know, there were the different challenges throughout the different steps, but I would say we were lucky enough to be able to rely on more than just ourselves. You know, we have the people at UE, at CLL, to thank for, especially Mr. Romulo Guedes. And we always had the general support of everyone around us in anything that we might need.
And what were the steps, actually, that you guys had to undertake in order to piece this together?
So, at first we made some points of obviously the cultural themes that we had to talk about. When speaking about Trinidad to any child, anyone, what are the main aspects that you look at culturally? And that's festivals, that's religions, that's ethnic diversity, linguistic diversity, liming, music, food. So we picked out those specific aspects of our culture and created little mini digestible stories related to them, and then came in the translating aspect. And what we really appreciate about translating in general, it's not a word-for-word type of situation. There's always a way to say something that is not exactly the way we would say it in English. So for instance, there's a line in the first or second chapter where Juanita says, oh, my friend she has divorced parents, so she lives between 2 homes, and I know what she means. Right? And to translate that literally in Spanish would come across as, I know what that signifies, which is not what you're trying to say. Yeah. So instead, the translation was, I know what she's trying to say by that.
That's why I always found Spanish a bit challenging for me. Yeah. It's not always the same in terms of literally the English to the Spanish translation in particular. But then how did you guys decide in terms of the various elements, who's going to do what? Anyone can answer.
Yeah,
both go on. Cool.
It's more of a combined group effort, but I would say we all have our strengths. So I would be more inclined on the interpreting, the translation side, whereas Rain, our friend Talia, Bilkis, they are also more inclined on the writing or, you know, that storytelling aspect of it as well.
Yeah, we had a lot of skills, and obviously we undertook this project pretty much on our own. So there was everything from dealing with the publishing, dealing with the designing of the book itself, the marketing. It was very much a group effort where we said, okay, what are you best at? What are you best at? Instead of saying, no, you do 4 chapters, you do 4 chapters, you do, you know? So it comes across like we all put in the same amount of work at the end of the day.
Yes. I think it's incredible that you guys went for, even for the design, for the marketing, for the publishing, you guys did all that by yourself.
Everything.
What has been the reactions thus far to those who have actually, you know, read the book or used the book?
Overwhelmingly positive, I would say. Yeah.
So much better than we expected. Obviously, we thought that this project would be used. We thought that, of course, this book can be used in a pedagogical setting to some extent. We did not expect like Jesse just said, overwhelmingly positive feedback we've gotten. Bocas reached out to us Bookstores have reached out to us, educators have reached out to us. That's been phenomenal. We're so grateful for that.
Jesse, as a teacher, what do you think the access to books, in particular this book, what power do you think it holds to those who actually utilize it?
You know, it's more of just the sense of learning, it's the sense of unity, and it's the sense of belonging that these kind of books bring along with them as well. So it's more of that we want to spread. You know, as you've mentioned, the boy and Carla, these children, they don't have something along those lines. So we want to be able to provide anything that, you know, might help them in addition to the learning to feel a sense of understanding as well.
A sense of understanding, because I understand actually that you guys have incorporated quite a lot of Trinbago culture in this book as well. So it's not just helping to teach or understand English, it's also to helping and understand what Trinbago's culture is. Yes. Was that something that was very difficult to do? Because there's so many elements to incorporate.
It was daunting. It was daunting to know that we have to represent Trinidad in the best way, also in a way that is fun for children to follow. It is a lot more difficult to write in a child's voice. That is not something that we would have ever had to do before. We had to make sure the children were engaged, which is where the samples went out and we got feedback from children along the way. My sister's been my first reader in that regard. She's been following the story for months, and she came and said, "Did you finish the next chapter? How is that going? Can I tell my friends yet?" I said, "No, you cannot yet tell your friends. We're still working on it."
And we wanted to include some of the most important, the major aspects of Trinidad as well, because I personally came here to live only when I was about 10 years old. So I know how lost I felt, because when I first came to Trinidad, I asked my dad, "Dad, what language are they speaking? Are they speaking Indian?" Because I did not understand anything about the Creole Trinidadian accent. I was very confused. And I basically had to learn everything from scratch, you know, the different traditions, the cultures, the different festivities, all of this from scratch, the food doubles, all of this. So it's along those lines as well that we wanted to help these children.
So your personal experiences is also incorporated into this book. It helped you in this process.
I would say so, yes.
We like to call him the original Juanito, actually.
We should have put that as his name on the screen.
We so should have done that.
Let me ask you though, is this book, I mean, you just gave an example that you only came here when you were 10 years old. So is this book only for Spanish-speaking migrants, or is this also for Trinbagonians to utilize and maybe learn something from it as well, hopefully?
Yes, not at all. It's not only for the Spanish speakers, it is for both English and Spanish speakers. It has the English with the Spanish side by side. So, you know, either way that you look at it, it's for learning the both languages and about learning more in regards to what it is to be Trinidadian or what it is to be in Trinidad as well. Not necessarily only that, but as Rain could add, it's about belonging and it's about fitting in, it's about learning about the different cultures, traditions.
It's about friendship, tolerance, diversity. Those are messages for any child, regardless of their nationality.
Those are messages for everyone, actually. Yeah. Is there a relationship, though, between the Spanish language and perhaps Trinbago, our dialect, our language?
Yes, I would definitely say so, but I love history, and I think that obviously Trinidadian history could not be shaped without the influence of the Spanish. So in our language, yes, of course, but in our culture, there's an entire chapter where Juanita learns about parang and what parang means, and she starts to feel like she is at home here when her friend teaches her parang for the first time and realizes that this is such a celebrated part of our culture, of our seasons. And she really identifies with that and can see herself in our culture in a way that she didn't think was possible. And she says in that chapter that she really feels at home and accepted because of that.
So I think it's most incredible how 4 UE students came together and did everything from conceptualizing this project to piecing it together, then actually having a final product of which you guys published, marketed, created the design for. It's a lot of work. How did you guys find this time to balance your... Listen, learning a language is not easy. Learning a language at university level is not easy at all. Where did the balance come in? How did you guys find that?
Well, personally, I felt like I was lucky enough to be teamed or grouped with the 3 smartest and most hardworking individuals I could know. You know, obviously Talia Khan, Bilkis Mohammed, and Reina Fonzo. So from my perspective...
that's the best answer you could have given.
I completely agree. Wow. Who media trained you?
Yes, because I cannot forget your co-hosts. Your co-hosts, your co-authors as well. But before we go, where is the book available?
So at present, the book is being sold at paper-based in 14 Alcazar Street, St. Clair. It's also being sold at Scribbles and Quills in Central. Those are 2 indie bookstores in Trinidad, and also it's coming soon to Mohammed's.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, to build
to
Amazon as well.
Amazon as well.
Yes. So
it's
to
available
Bilkis, Talia, Juanito, and Rain. Thank you guys very much for this product and for your hard work and for your part in making TNT a more inclusive society, a place for all. And congratulations, not only on graduating what I would consider a very tough, challenging course, but also on the publication of this book. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you for having us.
All the best. Look forward to the 2nd edition coming out. Thank you.
Yes,
Very All right, guys, listen, let's take a break here on AM Prime, and when we return, it's Wednesday. You know what that means. It means that we've got a wild guest joining us very shortly. We'll be right back.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sierra Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Police seek public help in identifying deceased man found in San Juan. Government maintains confidence in energy talks with the U.S. And internationally, U.S. Treasury Secretary says Washington set to impose new sanctions on Iran. Now for the details. San Juan residents were shocked on Monday afternoon upon the discovery of a deceased man's body in a secluded area off Brazo Seca Road, La Canoa Road, Lower Santa Cruz. The grim find, made around 2 p.m., was prompted by reports of a foul odor emanating from the vicinity. Upon investigations, locals stumbled upon the decomposing body concealed amidst the thick vegetation of the forest. Swiftly, authorities were alerted, prompting the dispatch of a team comprising of officers from the Homicide Bureau and the Northeastern Division under the leadership of Sergeant Rabuta. With the identity of the deceased still unknown, the police have issued a public appeal for assistance in identifying the man. Any information regarding this matter is encouraged to be reported to the authorities promptly. The government expresses confidence in the resilience of discussions concerning energy matters with American counterparts, acknowledging the inherent uncertainty of future political landscapes. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries Stuart Young articulated this optimism during a recent interview. Minister Young highlighted the ongoing dialogues with both Democrats and Republicans in the United States, as well as with public servants, emphasizing the durability of commitments made during these exchanges. Specifically, he referenced assurances received during engagements with the U.S. government regarding the license granted to TNT on October 17, 2023 by the Office of the Foreign Assets Control of the Department of the Treasury. In international news, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says Washington expects to impose new sanctions on Iran in the coming days following its attack on Israel. Israel is calling for sanctions to be imposed on Iran's missile project. Tel Aviv's foreign minister says he has written to 32 countries calling for restrictions. A wave of missiles and drones were fired from Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen on Saturday, with most being downed by Israel and its allies.
I fully expect that we will take additional sanctions action against Iran in the coming days. We don't preview our sanctions tools, but in discussions I've had, all options to disrupt terrorist financing of Iran continue to be on the table. As I mentioned, since the start of the administration, our sanctions have targeted over 500 individuals and entities connected to terrorism and terrorist financing. And since October 7th, in addition to robust Hamas sanctions, we've also acted against 117 people, entities, and vessels tied to financing of Iran's destabilizing activities, and we have acted against UAV and ballistic missile procurement networks, assassination rings, and terrorist networks. So I fully expect we will take additional sanctions action.
Well, that's it for News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
A wild Wednesday. I guess Berkey. Berk up the thing again. That's okay. Ricardo, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. Great to be back. Any Wednesday is always going to be a wild Wednesday, and I love it. Whether it's here or at the center, it's always wildness in my life, and I love every opportunity. People, I don't think, could really understand how thrilled I am for the opportunity to do this, literally day in, day out. And whenever I have a chance to reach and to teach and to educate people about our world here in Trinidad, our natural history, it makes it even more enjoyable.
Well, it has been about 3 weeks actually since
it's been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks.
Holiday and Eid and so we're back here and we're getting wild again. On Wild Wednesday.
Right. How have things been at the center though over the last few weeks?
Oh, hectic. We're getting ready. We're on pace. Everybody's a bit nervous. Anxiety is high because we're getting ready to go to Central America.
Oh, yes.
Our trip, our 4-country stop trip to Central America. So we're hitting Panama, we're hitting Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico, all in 1 week before coming back to Trinidad.
1 week?
1 week.
All those destinations?
All those destinations.
Bloody hell.
A lot of learning, a lot of experiencing, a lot of touch. It's just diving in And the hope is that, well, the delegation is quite large. We're up to 14.
Wow.
Right, 14. But don't worry, we have accommodations. We will not be putting up a GoFundMe to get place to stay and stuff like that. We've done it before. That was what the fundraiser is about and so on. I am a very forward person. So I would think till next week and then plan from this week. Next year and plan from this year. So I look at the bad side first. What could go wrong? Fix it, and then hopefully everything now goes on the right course.
It sounds as though you guys are going to need a vacation when you come back from
It's going to be exhausting,
yeah,
you know, because we're going to want to get out in the night and do some herping, looking for animals and so on, their mammals and you name it, you know.
You just used the term there, what, herping?
Herping, yeah, herping when you go looking for, well, herps. You have your reptiles as well as your amphibians. So at night you'll get more snakes coming out, you will get even some turtles, lizards, and you will get frogs, lots of frogs and amphibians. So we're going to be looking for all of that to just that experience and you know, take it all in and learn. So when we come back here, we have a great team that is really empowered, highly motivated. That's the thing, to motivate these young people to continue. Because every day that I look in the mirror and I see a new gray strand coming out, I'm reminded about my pending mortality. I'm not going to be there forever. It seemed like I was there forever, but it's time to step back and let the young people take over running the center, directing wildlife and conservation and education here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I can't just throw them into the deep end. I have to get them into that phase, into that mode where they're really capable. And when I see that's happening, I am going to step back and go to Australia and look for box jellyfish.
You want to look for box jellyfish?
I have to see it. I have to see it. You know, I like to just get it in
an
the glass.
aquarium, right?
No, I'm in the glass in my hand and like, wow, one of the deadliest creatures down here.
In the palm of your hand?
Yeah, it's a glass. The glass.
Wow, that's
You know,
great.
just
How
to
was
see
the
it.
fundraiser though?
The fundraiser was absolutely phenomenal. The support we got from people out there was just amazing. And they're there, they're taking it all in, and they're asking for more. What are you going to do next? Because they realize that we do things differently. So we have a couple of concepts that we're playing with for next. One is the water world. And of course, that would tell you that's very difficult to do. We had a reef tank that everybody was fascinated by. How the hell did you get a reef tank set up here for 2 days? That looking as amazing as this, 125-gallon reef tank. But we did it. And the reason we did it is that we stayed up all night and we filtered water, we transported water, and it's tough. I must say my volunteers stepped up and the show was amazing. It was out of this world. I couldn't have asked for a better show there that weekend. So we have Water World considering, and we have another one. It's a small world after all.
It is indeed, actually. Speaking about small world and all the creatures of which mankind has the pleasure of living alongside of, who is our guest this morning?
Our guest today is, drum roll please, a ratanel.
A ratanel?
A ratanel. Ratanel.
Not familiar with
type
the
of
term.
snake.
Okay.
Also known as a pseudoboa. Very interesting snake because of what it does and what's his favorite. So he's a nice big guy. I haven't seen a big guy like this for a while. He can get up to about 3 feet.
He's shiny. Did he just shed?
Yeah. No, not recently. But they're just an amazing snake. Pretty much harmless to humans. But if you are a reptile.
A reptile?
Look out. Yeah. Their favorite food happens to be snakes.
Really?
Snakes. Yes, and other reptiles. So for example, you know, we can talk about what we saw, and my experience with these snakes is that I had, when we were on Boundary Road in Sawa, which is where the center started off, hence the name El Socorro Center for Wildlife Conservation, we had a couple of young iguanas that we had bred, and they were in a grow-out enclosure over a saltwater pond. And it was 3/4 wire. So one of these guys got in there and ate the iguana and could not come out. Because the iguana couldn't come out. So he went in, and they expand so much to be able to swallow the iguana that he could not come out. And I'm like, wow, once in a lifetime experience. Then we moved down to Freeport, Ciudad Road, where the center was last located. And the same thing happened in the same cage yet again. Another ratanel, well, we expected a lot more in that area because at that time now we were in the bush, got into the cage and ate another iguana. So I come out in the morning and the ratanel is literally there sitting in the cage. I'm like, well, you're the new cage occupant now since you ate who was in the cage before. So
these guys are quite common, and yet I've never heard of them.
Well, one, they come out at night. So that shuts down the possibility of it being seen to a lot of people. What do we normally do at night? We go in our beds. We're not going to go out back, look under the rocks and look in the grass to see who's slithering around and a whole new ecosystem that opens up once it gets dark. We're oblivious to that. And that's part of the reason we bring it to you here, is because we don't even know these are around us, around your homes. It's just an amazing snake. Come on, you can hold on to him there. It's really easy to deal with. Just give him space to keep moving and he'll be happy. Just hold him up there.
He's absolutely beautiful.
Look where he's going. He's going to go up your sleeve there. Gets a chance.
Scales
just use your two hands and give him, because he's a nice size and he wants to just keep moving. So instead of him getting off camera and out of the shot, you just got to keep giving him that space to keep moving. It is a smooth, beautiful snake.
Very smooth.
And it's a snake that has tricked us quite a bit. When they're young, they look like another snake that is very rare and highly desirable, the black crebo. They have that sort of black crebo look when they're small, because they're more black, the body's more black, and they have that sort of reddish head, that sort of look. So they go through a significant color change. Smaller ones I've seen are even more pink, almost as pink as your shirt, that sort of pink salmon there.
The pink
so there's
tongue.
quite a range of color as they age and the territory and so on. But we get excited when we see them, whether it's a black crebo or ratonelle, because it's just an amazing, beautiful snake that eats even the venomous snakes. So they have been recorded eating iguanas, zandali, coral snakes.
Coral snakes?
It doesn't matter.
I don't think you should go in there.
They don't discriminate. They eat anything. Okay, they will eat mammals also, rats and mice also, but their favorite things are reptiles. Of course, frogs fall into that also. So they just go at everything. And this snake will probably never, ever bite. I will never say never, full stop, because anything can happen if you mistreat it and squeeze the animal too much and he decides like, I have to get defensive. He may try to bite, but they almost never, ever bite. It's very hard to do. But in a pinch, even a human will bite if you have to.
I mean, I'm amazed, because I'm not even looking at the scale or just the colors that it's. As you said, it's known as a false boa.
A pseudoboa.
A pseudoboa.
Yes.
Okay, why do you refer to it as a pseudoboa?
Well, it's not really a boa. Okay, so it's not in the family of like the red tails and so on like that. But it has a nice little body mass and size and the way it moves and so on. So it's just a beauty. It is just a beauty. And his approach of grabbing and crushing almost some of the prey, or just overpowering and trying to swallow. Sometimes they are eating an animal and it's still alive, and they're just literally working it down their throats. And like I said, you have to see it to see the expansion and the size. If you go on YouTube, you can see some of the large prey that they have ingested over time. And like I told you,
you tell me a guy this size, or probably smaller, has taken on an iguana?
Yes. The iguana couldn't come out the cage. That's his enclosure. But he went in the cage, so he was definitely smaller than the iguana. But by the time he ate the iguana, he couldn't come out the cage. So that's just to show you the amount he literally stretched his body to accommodate that reptile. And that is just, for me, it's just totally amazing.
What gives his scales? They're so smooth, this color.
Yeah, it's an amazing iridescence. Like a lot of snakes, and even some birds have that arrangement of the scales and feathers that uses the light and reflects it or refracts it in a particular way that causes the color variations. So you see from rainbows, you see sometimes a solid color. And I mean, I would love one day to be able to do hummingbirds. If I can next week, maybe, we do have a couple hummingbirds.
How do you even?
That's a whole other world. Hopefully maybe we'll deal with that next week. But we have a hummingbird that we raised from a nestling, and he's getting ready to get out there. It was quite a challenge, but we've been doing it for quite a few years. We've had quite a few releases, so we're getting better. And we do this all without bringing in the foreign or imported food. We just use what we have here in Trinidad, and we make it happen, and we rehab them, and then they go off into the wild.
Now, In regard to the snake, you said this is actually quite a big guy. You haven't seen one this big and so...
For a while, yeah. But they can get up to 3 feet. Well, he's almost 3 feet.
Yeah, he's almost there. Yeah, he's almost there.
Yeah, it's a beauty. It's a beauty.
But you're seeing he expands well, because I'm taking a look at the shape of the snake, and I realize, compared to the other snakes we had before, he's rather flat.
Right. So you know, for the most part, he's a ground dweller. And he would slip in and under stuff, and it's just a cool snake. And it's almost like he's just, just made to slip into spaces and stuff like that there. That his nose here, you'll get in and burrow a bit into the ground. So a lot of the ground dwellers and so on there, they have the little pointy noses and they're smooth. So you don't want anything obstructing your motion and your escape or your stealth movement through the leaves and on the ground and so on. So he's literally is a smooth criminal.
Are these guys venomous?
No. Nope. Although they believe that there is a measure of venom that would help to immobilize the reptiles and some of the small mammals that they consume.
So it's not harmful to humans, of course.
Not harmful to humans. Yeah, well, you can't get it to bite you to really figure it out. Most studies have to be done on a lot of stuff that we have here.
I don't really care for any animal to bite me.
It is what I would consider really a safe snake. Okay, people would have confused it for the rainbow.
Careful what you say, because people then say, I want this as a pet.
Yeah, but where are you going to keep it, and how are you going to feed it, right? So
especially considering what it eats.
Yeah, before the end of this week, this guy is going to be going and being released.
Really?
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate we got to see him.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just timing, you get somebody to call, hey, we have this in the back, and oh my gosh, that's this, and I'm like, so what are we doing for Wild Wednesday tomorrow? Well, we got a new guy in. We're going to present him because you're not going to get too many opportunities. We don't want to keep a ton of stuff. This is a lot of work to create the environment and to get the food for these animals. And especially one at this size, you're better out there in the wild doing your thing. Populating, providing your genetic code out there and ensuring that your family of snakes continues.
Look at this guy.
Yeah.
He's just settled. He's happy. Does he have any, everything has a predator. I know the first answer will always be man, because if a man comes across a snake, it's,
Mr. Tree Lion.
But what in the wild would be his main concerns in terms of predators?
Well, the folks that eat him, and that would be the larger snake-eating snakes. So the one that he mimics is the black-tailed crebo. So black-tailed crebo could easily eat him. He's not going to say, hey, you eat snakes, I'm not going to eat you. He's eating anything that he can get his jaws locked on. And then also you have mammals and ocelots. So he and the ocelot would occupy the same space at the same time. He comes out at night, the ocelot comes out at night. The ocelot comes across him, that's a great meal. That's a lovely snack in his belly. And then birds, although he's lucky that most of the birds of prey are diurnal, so that he would most likely not encounter him. But during a disturbance event, so for example, if there's a bushfire, ground dwelling, his area is messed up, so he seeks refuge, which means now he is active in the day. And now there's an opportunity for a white hawk, for example, which absolutely loves reptiles, to grab him. The white hawk is probably going to be like, I do not believe this.
What a treat, a delicacy.
You understand? I haven't seen one of these guys since way back when, and swoop down, grab him, and an amazing meal. So when he's forced out, the unusual predators, when it's unusual because they wouldn't usually be predators of this, would have an opportunity to get him, and at night the nocturnal animals would have an opportunity to get to him. So the ocelot would be one main one there that would absolutely love to snack on these guys here, especially since they're an easy target.
Why are these guys important to our environment and our ecosystem?
Everything has that role to play. It's all blocks, or pieces in that circle that lock together. And anytime you start pulling them out, you weaken the circle, which is our environment and our ecosystem. So their role in, okay, oh my gosh, there are lots of this snake, and you know how many snake are mapipi? He will eat mapipis, he will eat some iguanas, he will eat coral snakes, he will eat zandali. By what he does, burrowing and so on, creating that movement and facilitating or better composting by their natural behavior and turning over stuff and aerating stuff there, and then also by what it eats, right? And also by what it eats. So they all fit together. Many don't play a tremendous part. It's not the only animal doing that, but when you collectively put together lots of burrowing snakes, you have any idea what activity and movement goes on the forest floor because of these animals?
You might not even be aware of it, would you?
Right, yeah. But when you put them together, they all do their part, and it's just, for me, it's just amazing to see and understand that this is just another one of the creatures there that help to make our country what it is. And we need to appreciate that. I'm not asking you to love snakes. It's not for everybody, that's all right. Not everybody loves dogs and everybody loves cats, but you're not going to go out there and eliminate them, are you?
No, no.
Right? Even though they don't even belong in this part of the world, you're not going to eliminate them. So these creatures that belong here, that have done their parts for centuries to help create your area where you now live, where you live in Las Lomas, Cunupia, Freeport, Chickland, they would have been in that ecosystem doing their thing for millennia. And now you come here and you see the snake and like, oh my gosh, these snakes in the area, we want to get rid of them. Leave it alone, especially one that is this harmless, and this one that will probably be the first to eliminate that coral snake that you may come across.
And do not try to figure out yourself whether or not this snake is harmless. Don't need to go up to it at all. Just leave it.
Yeah. Leave it alone. That's what we teach the children. Okay, we even give them a chance to interact with the wildlife. But if you go by grandma this weekend and you see the very same type of snake, are you going to hold it? No. What are you going to do? Leave it alone. Because this snake is being handled by professionals. People know what they're doing. That one in the wild is one, not an ambassador, and it doesn't know that you mean no harm. So it's going to become defensive, and then dad's going to come in and he's going to want to defend you, and it's going to be a whole debacle because you ventured into their space, as it were. So the best bet is to just really leave them alone, understand that these animals are just part of our ecosystem. Not everything is there to hurt you. Okay, as you can see, you're having like absolute fun with this snake this morning.
He's very active.
It's just,
He's active. He's exploring.
Very, you know, wake him up this early morning and he's just like, I'll get around and see. And notice how his tongue does not stop. It just keeps flickering.
It does not. It's like a hummingbird flying. It just doesn't stop.
It's just, it really is an amazing creature. We're going to take some amazing pictures and just get it back into the wild. Grateful for the opportunity to come and present it here on Wild Wednesday.
Grateful for the opportunity I got to experience this.
I'm going to get a count, but it's a number. I think we're probably up to 10 or 12 now, possibly snakes. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not too far from that number.
We've had quite a few, and well, we have 49 different snakes in the country, and it would be amazing to present them all.
Wow.
Don't know how we're going to do with the venomous ones. We just have to keep it in the case and so on.
I think that
but
might
whichever
be
way it works, I'm pretty sure that you are not going to hold a ribbon coral snake like that. You know, and I would not recommend it. And I will not be holding it either.
Pretty sure I don't want to get any kisses from a ribbon coral.
Definitely. And it wouldn't probably be that happy to be around you anyway. But we would love to present this so people have an opportunity and this stuff goes into the archives, and one day someone will be able to pull it up and say, hey, that's what this is, and they can learn. That's what it comes down. You can't love something if you don't know about it.
Of course.
So you have to know. So we're taking every opportunity to reach people, teach people, and the programs continue. We're so busy.
As I said, I'm the fortunate one because I get to sit on this. Sometimes I'm not the fortunate one when we've got creatures such as the wonderful spider that the chevron.
Right, and
but
like
most times I'm fortunate.
Right. So our guest next week may be La Cucaracha. Sing it with me. La cucaracha, coming for Wild Wednesday.
I'm staying home.
That's an important creature also, eh?
I'm not saying it's not an important creature, but I think cockroach, locust, and spiders are my top 3. Hell no.
So you're going to sneak it in. So folks, I change that. No cockroaches next week.
No, you see, the thing is what's interesting to many people who've pointed it out to me. Like, people say, oh my God, you hold snakes. You have all these animals. And when I say I don't like cockroaches, like, you could handle a snake, but not a cockroach.
There you go. It's all phobias. So
everybody's a bit different.
Logic-based or anything like that. That's why it's a phobia. It's just an irrational fear of something because of something you perceive. I saw one
No,
guy.
it's not something I perceive, my friend. It's the mere fact that I've had so many encounters where the majority of cockroaches I've come across are the ones that like to fly. You know, the ones that just like to stay on the ground and probably run. You know, that's one thing. You see the ones that like to fly and somehow or the other fly in your direction.
Oh, I love that.
Actually. No, that's good for you.
That gives me keeps me sharp and pouncing. You know, when they fly, so I'm in a room and there's a cockroach. Somebody's trying to approach it to kill it, and of course, you know what it does next. It flies. And I practice my grabbing techniques, you know. Or even when they're on the wall, people like looking for a shoe. I just use my hand and splat. And they're like, ew, you killed it with your hand? I said, yeah, because my tongue was busy. What do you want me to do, grab it? I'm not a frog or a chameleon. I killed it with my hand. You know, would you rather the roach that you're so terrified of run away? And that's usually what happens. They usually run away and you just never get it. So I'm not giving it a chance to get away. Also because I've had, you know, programs where we've had lots of animals that eat them, I just see that as food. That's food for something. That's food for a bird. That's food for a tarantula. That's food for a frog. So I'm not going to let that food get away. So a slight splat on the wall, and we got it. It's not getting away, not from me.
You are more than welcome to bring La Cucaracha to AM Prime, to Wild Wednesday. It's not a problem. Just know that you'll be hosting that by yourself. Education is important, my friend. I totally agree. I'll take a step out of the studio for that that particular segment.
No, we'll bring the local Trinidad wood cockroaches, which are absolutely fascinating, found in all these tunnels and all the caves. You know, when you go in that cave, you get that cave smell. You know, just recently we had an opportunity to get an oil bird.
An oil bird?
Yeah, but
whoa!
We would not have been able to rescue it in time, so we're trying to get the guy to approach it to get it. They always found not in the caves. They end up in somebody's backyard on a mango tree.
Really, the oil bird?
When he was approaching it to capture it, it took off, and I was like, man, that would have been amazing, because it's a bird that's already been sort of out.
Yeah.
You know, so we don't have to go into the caves and, you know, put artificial light and throw off the whole ecosystem inside there. But an opportunity like that, you know, we've had several rescues right in Port of Spain here. Just imagine that. You
With
know.
the oil bird?
Oil bird, Ryson Road, oil bird, movie
You're
tongue,
kidding.
oil bird. We've had, oh my gosh, I have a video of an oil bird flying around my wife's room. He's just flying around in the house there, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
You know.
What about the Pawi?
I have yet to encounter a Pawi live in the wild.
I think...
I've met him before, but not in the wild.
It's so rare. In fact, many a times I think people mistake the black vulture, the kobu, as you say, for a Pawi.
No, they want it to be. It's like looking at clouds. If you wanted to be Trinidad, you see in Trinidad, they're in the clouds. But there are some places in Trinidad where their breeding program seems to be quite successful. Not human-inspired, but just human-allowed. They're just in the area, have not messed with them, and they're breeding. And there are a few generations now in that particular area, and I'm quite happy for them. So I know where I have to go to see the Pawi. I just have not had the time. It's been so crazy. Yeah. You know, and it's getting more crazy. Career days are coming up, and we hope to have a really nice selection of wildlife ambassadors to take to the career day, because the idea isn't to get people excited to like the animals, but people to understand, especially for something like a career day, the way it works is that you've been told doctor, lawyer, this, that, the other. The world is now your playground. You can choose anything. And I'm not just saying this because people trumpet that in. I actually have a friend of mine who went to school with me, was doing business administration, and now she's a rocket scientist with NASA.
A rocket scientist with NASA?
Literally, she's a doctor. Dr. Alicia Joseph is a rocket scientist with NASA. When I met her and discovered that's what she was, that's what she did, the course that she took in life from business administration with me at Medgevers in Brooklyn, I was mind blown.
Wow.
Right? Simple young lady right here from Woodbrook, went to, I think it was Woodbrook Government.
That's right on the road from here, yeah.
Right, and now she's a rocket scientist in NASA. And I was mind blown. I said, I didn't know you had this in you. She says, well, you saw one part, but a lot of times people just need the opportunity to express other interests and capabilities. And that's what the career day is about, really. Giving young people, some people, I don't know what to do, I don't feel like I can do anything, I want to do anything, give them that opportunity to see so many things.
Because there's so much out there that people don't know about. Yeah.
Just imagine, the most expensive liquid in the world is?
Is it, I'll tell you, it's a crab's blood. Horseshoe crab's blood.
Even more expensive than that.
Really, what?
Scorpion venom.
That's the most expensive?
Yes. At $39 million a gallon, it is the most expensive liquid in the world.
39 million.
$39 million a gallon.
Well, it takes quite a lot.
Just imagine how many scorpions you got to
milk
milk to get a gallon, right? And you may not live to enjoy that money, okay? But it's important. And they're doing a lot of research, and it can do so much. That's why it's so important, and you get so little of it.
The horseshoe crab's blood, though, isn't that one of the...
Yeah, it's up there. It's very important in medicine, and that's what I need people to understand. That is, you would look at this creature and think, hey, it's well, it's not even really a crab, but let's call it a crab.
Yeah, let's call it a crab.
So vital in so much research and medical breakthroughs that have, we can't even wrap our minds around it. And again, I say to people, medicine, you look at the scepter, it's wrapped around by a serpent, a snake. Because what can kill you can actually do some amazing things for you.
It can save you.
Yeah. So next week we're gonna touch on that next week for Wild Wednesday. We're gonna bring in a bird that has been through a lot. So he's back with us again. This bird has been through a lot and has an incredible story. We got to get the story out there. This story is going to make, it's going to go international because it's very relatable and it goes to what people do to protect themselves, but do serious damage to the environment.
Well, I look forward to that story next week.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. More than a year in the making.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity. Thank you so very, very much.
Always. And I'm thrilled that I can just sit here and you can hand listening. And it's not giving people out there false confidence. It's just helping them to understand that we have creatures big and small, and you don't have to pull a tree line for them all.
You don't. That rhymes. Well, from my slippery friend here, who's absolutely... He's been very active, hasn't he? Thank you very much, Ricardo, and thank you very much to the centre and to all the volunteers, and we'll see you again, ladies and gentlemen.
Looking forward to it.
Very, very soon. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Ariapita Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
But I can't help but think that somewhere there is a school that now is, 2 substitute teachers less, and they haven't benefited from the coverage that we got, and will be struggling with the school year.
Mm-hmm. And what's the situation like in the classroom for what you've been able to observe with these new substitute teachers? I mean, what's the feeling you're getting from the teachers and the kids?
Well, I think it's hard. There's always an adjustment period, and because there were so many weeks, months, where the children didn't have any teachers, and we're talking about a maternelle, a kindergarten, so that the kids are aged between 3 to 5. That age group, they really crave stability. That's what they need. They need familiar faces. You want them to be excited about school. It's their first year of school. It's their entry into education. And I think that what I saw anyway with the children was a kind of unwillingness to go to school. And I think still now they're getting to know the substitute teachers. But a lot of this has been rushed because there is this huge shortage of substitute teachers in France, and it's something that I truly hope the government will try and focus on, because it's really a fundamental human right.
It absolutely is. And Saskia, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us here on France 24. Stay with me. We're going to get a bit more analysis now with Paul Smith. Paul's the head of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Nottingham. Paul, why has there been such a big problem recruiting not just substitute teachers, but just regular teachers in France?
Well, I think that one of the underlying long-term problems is that the value of teachers in France has deteriorated over the last 20, 30 years. It's no longer an attractive profession for young people going in. I mean, there's an enormous problem of candidates. It's not just a question of recruiting teachers in the first place. It's a question of getting candidates who are actually sitting the teacher training exams and then getting them into the system.
And there are so many teachers who are actually leaving the profession as well. As you said, France is a country that loves education. I mean, every year this is a country that tells us what's on the philosophy end-of-year exam. When did teaching and how did teaching become so undermined in France?
It's difficult to say. I think most Western societies saw a turn, let's say towards the end of the 20th into the early 20th century, when it no longer became, there was no longer, people no longer questioned the system. And that became the moment where people began to challenge what teachers were teaching. And we've seen that in a lot of different ways, of course, in France, which probably we won't go into today. But that kind of leads on to a deterioration in the prestige of teaching. We've seen it here in the UK, and we've certainly seen it in other countries. And France is no different. And I think that a lot of other changes, decisions have been made. For example, Macron, when he first became president, said he wanted to cut back on the number of fonctionnaires, number of state employees. That includes teachers and administrators. And so by trying to cut back after you had people leaving the profession, actually there was no money to recruit new teachers. And as Saskia was kind of alluding to, the education system is like a tanker. You can't turn it, it's not an agile thing. You can't turn it quickly. So those long decisions that are made past are kind of coming home to roost now.
Indeed. We don't have a lot of time left, Paul, but just to wrap up, what about these solutions that the government is trying to come up with now? Do you think anything will stick? Anything will be able to turn this boat around?
Well, I don't think uniforms are the solution. I mean, they're and the national anthem. What is really needed is a revaloration and thinking about salaries. You know, young people who get to the end of a 2-year master's and are thinking about going to teaching are attracted to other professions. The levels of remuneration in France when you're a teacher are ridiculous in comparison to Germany. Compared to Germany, and your starting salaries are so low. And that's really the bottom line.
It is. Paul, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us. And Saskia, again, thank you for coming in and telling us about your story. Thanks to all of you for watching France 24. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come.
Dès le prochain projet de loi de finances.
Hi, I'm Anthony Mills, Vienna correspondent for France 24. There's more to Austria than mountains, lakes and coffee houses, as wonderful as they are. Vienna is a seat of the United Nations and hosts international organizations, so there's plenty of high-profile diplomacy to cover. And every now and then, Austrian national politics goes global.
Anthony Mills, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Hello and welcome to Tête à Tête, France 24's flagship interview show. Our guest today is Ehud Barak. He's a former Prime Minister of Israel. He also served as Defense Minister and as the Army's Chief of Staff. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Barak.
Thank you for having me.
For the first time ever, Iran struck directly at Israel through a barrage of drones and missiles. Is this the opening shot of a war between Iran and Israel?
I think the answer is negative, and for sure not necessarily a war. The unprecedented Iranian missile attack failed in a dramatic manner as a result of early deployment of many forces that probably at the top of it our Air Force, our air defense multi-layer systems, but there is a great contribution of the Americans, of the Brits, and of you, the French forces and people in the Middle East, and we are thankful for it very much. And because of the dramatic failure of this high volume attack, I think that there is no need and no will to go into full-scale war. Israel very probably will respond, very probably on Iranian soil, but in a way, I believe that will be calculated or calibrated in order to avoid it from deteriorating into a full-scale war.
So your assessment is that Israel should not retaliate massively against Iran in order to avoid essentially a regional war?
Yeah. Exactly. I think that there's no need for it, and we can do it. Of course, there is certain element of wish or wishful thinking here. I hope it won't cause a war. I cannot guarantee it 100%. And I think that the opportunity for Israel as a result of this successful coalition in action, in real action, it's a great opportunity for Israel to become part of an axis of moderate autocratic Sunnite countries, together with Israel and America, and with certain participation of major NATO players, to set ourselves vis-a-vis the axis of rogue entities led by Iran, with Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis in Yemen, probably backed by Russia. And that's the right direction for us to do. And in order to keep all these coalitions together, we cannot act upon our kind of particular wishes of Israel.
Right. Do you think Iran failed because it didn't want to strike Israel, or because it wasn't able to?
Oh, clearly it wasn't able. There were some 350 flying machines on the way with no pilots the way to Israel. About half of the ballistic missiles, which carried a more kind of massive explosive kind of warheads, about probably 40% of them failed to even make the whole way. They, without any external intervention, they failed. Some of them over Iranian soil and other on Iraqi soil or so, or Jordanian. Out of the more than half that made it, the Americans shot a lot. The British shot some of them. The French shot some of them probably even before they reached Israel. And only probably 4 or 5, probably 6, reached Israel. So the achievement is more than 90% of the ballistic missiles were intercepted. In the drones, it was even higher fraction. And the same happened to the cruise missiles. So total failure and quite significant achievement and deterrence. The president created deterrence for the next time. If the Iranians will have to do another such an attack without correcting the elements that led to this failure, it will fail once again probably, and that's quite a tough prospect for them.
Right. According to Iran, this was done in response to an Israeli strike on its embassy compound in Damascus, which killed several officers of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. Did Israel miscalculate, not realizing that Iran could strike Israel in return? Was this a miscalculation by Israel's top leadership?
First of all, I want to make a note that technically speaking, the structure that was hit was outside the embassy compound and used by those basically terrorists on behalf of a country, some Iranian people who operate the terrorist activities from Syria. And but having said that, the Israeli authorities and intelligence and the leadership for sure failed in the assessment or underestimated what might be the Iranian response for such an attack on a high-level individual. The main target was a general named Hadi or Madawi, depends when you ask his name. And this general was very senior guy, and the fact that a lot of arrogance came out from Israel caused humiliation of the Iranian leadership. So they probably found themselves compelled to do something dramatic, and they did it. It's not the first failure of our leadership that you see now on the screen. They failed, the same leadership failed in October 7th to assess what Hamas is doing. So here is a source of my warning to ourselves. Take wide safety margins when you decide what to do as a response to this missile attack, because the same leadership failed in underestimated the Hamas on October 7, underestimated the Iranians from April 1, and cannot afford underestimate once more the intentional response of the Hamas. That needs a lot of cautious thinking, probably let the blood cooled a little bit, and first think and then act, not the other way around.
Right. Speaking of Gaza, 6 months of war, Israel said it would eradicate Hamas and free the hostages. What is your assessment of the current situation in Gaza?
I think the hostages is the most urgent issue. I think that when our leadership is talking, Netanyahu keeps saying, oh, we are one step from absolute victory, just as a victory just behind the corner. That's not true, objectively. Just to remove from the Rafah area 750,000 or something like this in order to enable the operation without causing a major collateral damage, that might take a month at least. And if I take as a precedent how long it took us to destroy the Hamas battalion, so to speak, in Khan Yunis, and apply it to Rafah, it might take 3, 4, or 5 months. So we have about half a year before this ultimate victory, and I'm not talking about ultimate, I don't believe in ultimate victories, but basically to destroy the military and reigning capability of Hamas in Rafah might take half a year. Even now, we have about half of the hostages are probably not alive anymore. If we wait another 6 months, most of them, if not all of them, will come back in coffin. So that makes the whole thing much more urgent. The idea that those hostages, they are not prisoners of war. They are men, women, children, elderly people. Some are older than myself, and they are there because they were deserted, abandoned by our own leadership. So you cannot even think morally and practically of sacrificing those who were abandoned and deserted 6 or 7 months ago on the altar of destroying certain kind of mythical 2 battalions in some refugee camp or some 4 battalions or whatever it was in Rafah. So we have a compelling imperative to look at the wider picture. We need now the negotiation, much more determined negotiations to reach an agreement about the hostages. Then we have to pacify or end the job in Gaza. Then we have to calm down the situation in the north along the Lebanese border with the Hezbollah. And as a result of this, being able to bring back about 100,000 Israelis, both from the area around Gaza and from the strip along the Lebanese border, who are refugees in their own country. They cannot come home. So this is the responsibility of our government now. And the completion of the job in Gaza or the completion of the issue with Iran might take years. It's not an issue, and for sure can wait a month or 2 or 3 months, not a problem. So I think that we need to come out of a strategic paralysis that our leadership at the top suffers from. The military operates with significant achievements, but the political leadership did not take any strategic decision from day one. For 7 months, the Netanyahu and the inner circle reject and delay or hesitate to take any strategic decision. For example, we are almost 7 months into the war, and Israel never defined what is the vision for the morning after. To whom are we hand over the Gaza Strip? Who will reign over the Gaza Strip? And that's crazy. There is an old Roman saying, says that if you don't know which port you want to reach, no wind will take you there. And even an effective, strong armed force cannot operate without a clear political directive. That's a tragedy, and I hope that we will wake up from this strategic paralysis and take certain strategic patience in regard to the response on Iran, because they failed anyhow, and focus on solving the other problems. And the problem also, my last remark, there is a simple situation in Gaza. We have a compelling imperative to make sure that Hamas will not reign over Gaza and will be capable of threatening Israel. Element number two, Israel doesn't have an interest to stay there for the long term. We had been there for a generation, and it ended up with evacuation from Gaza that we decided upon. And the third element is there are Palestinians there. You cannot bring French people or Norwegians or South Africans to reign over there. You should bring back Palestinians. They can be held by some military inter-Arab force from several neighboring countries at the first stage, but ultimately they will bring back the Palestinian Authority, hopefully revised and kind of revitalized because they are now very poor and very, very weak. But that's the only practical or viable solution or sustainable solution, and we have to change direction. Instead of going deeper and deeper into the mud, we have to join hands with the Americans, with the Sunnite moderate neighbors, and solve the problem together.
Ehud Barak, I want to thank you very much for appearing here on France 24 from Tel Aviv, and thank you all for watching this show.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Paris Direct on France 24. I'm Jeannie Godula. The headlines. The U.S. and the European Union both working on new hard-hitting sanctions on Iran. Washington particularly targeting Tehran's missile and drone program after its weekend attack on Israel. European Union ministers also looking at expanding sanctions on Iran's weapons program. We'll be getting reaction from Israel with Jordana Miller in just a moment. Then a triple Russian airstrike on northern Ukraine leaves at least 10 dead and many more hurt. This as U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson is facing right-wing backlash over plans for more aid to Ukraine. And the Olympic Games in Paris are now 100 days away. Angela Diffley will be on set to take a closer look at the mounting security concerns over the Games, including its unprecedented open-air opening ceremony on the River Seine.
WESN.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Police seek public help in identifying deceased man found in San Juan. Government maintains confidence in energy talks with the U.S. And internationally, U.S. Treasury Secretary says Washington set to impose new sanctions on Iran. Now for the details. San Juan residents were shocked on Monday afternoon upon the discovery of a deceased man's body in a secluded area off Brazo Seco Road, La Canor Road, Lower Santa Cruz. The grim find, made around 2 p.m., was prompted by reports of a foul odor emanating from the vicinity. Upon investigations, locals stumbled upon the decomposing body concealed amidst the thick vegetation of the forest. Swiftly, authorities were alerted, prompting the dispatch of a team comprising of officers from the Homicide Bureau and the Northeastern Division under the leadership of Sergeant Rabuta. With the identity of the deceased still unknown, the police have issued a public appeal for assistance in identifying the man. Any information regarding this matter is encouraged to be reported to the authorities promptly. The government expresses confidence in the resilience of discussions concerning energy matters with American counterparts, acknowledging the inherent uncertainty of future political landscapes. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries Stuart Young articulated this optimism during a recent interview. Minister Young highlighted the ongoing dialogues with both Democrats and Republicans in the United States, as well as with public servants, emphasizing the durability of commitments made during these exchanges. Specifically, he referenced assurances received during engagements with the U.S. government regarding the license granted to TNT on October 17, 2023 by the Office of the Foreign Assets Control of the Department of the Treasury. In international news, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says Washington expects to impose new sanctions on Iran in the coming days following its attack on Israel. Israel is calling for sanctions to be imposed on Iran's missile project. Tel Aviv's foreign minister says he has written to 32 countries calling for restrictions. A wave of missiles and drones were fired from Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen on Saturday, with most being downed by Israel and its allies.
I fully expect that we will take additional sanctions action against Iran in the coming days. We don't preview our sanctions tools, but in discussions I've had, all options to disrupt terrorist financing of Iran continue to be on the table. As I mentioned, since the start of the administration, our sanctions have targeted over 500 individuals and entities connected to terrorism and terrorist financing. And since October 7th, in addition to robust Hamas sanctions, we've also acted against 117 people, entities, and vessels tied to financing of Iran's destabilizing activities, and we have acted against UAV and ballistic missile procurement networks, assassination rings, and terrorist networks. So I fully expect we will take additional sanctions action.
Well, that's it. News on the hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
WESN.
One of the penalties for refusing to engage in politics is that you end up being, well, ruled by your inferiors. Plato. Sean Michael Small here. I was from Plato. This is from me. Talking Point Heads on WSN, the content capital. And the fact of the matter is, the man was onto something. When you think about it, those who don't want to engage in office politics somewhat, should not be surprised when the people who seemingly don't have any skills to do the job, but they're good at politicking, end up becoming their boss. When you're in a property, a gated community, you don't have time to be on the board, but somehow people who generally are foolish and they're very negative and potentially destructive, somehow they end up on the board. And of course, how many people complain about the inefficiencies and lack of ability of politicians in general, and yet they themselves want to give the excuse, well, it doesn't matter who I vote for anyway. Why are you going to get involved for? And therein lies the result. And one of the things that I would hope to impress upon the population, and I myself am looking for ways that I could responsibly continue to engage without, you know, being caught up in the drama and the bacchanal and the less than positive, bad faith parts of our political environment. We all should be trying to be involved, and I encourage others to as well. Because it seems as though a lot of young people, and by young people I don't just mean teenagers or early 20s, it's also those in their 30s, maybe even 40s. A lot of us don't want to get involved, so then who do we leave the future to? Let's even forget about now. Let's not even worry about the now. The now might be too hard to change, maybe. All right, fine. Let's just say we concede that, even though we probably shouldn't. What about the future? Do we just allow this situation to perpetuate? And the fact of the matter is, it's not as though our politicians are stupid or in some respects unqualified, but rather the feedback that they get from the voters is that don't swim upstream, take the easy road, because that's what's going to benefit them both in the short and the long run, because we don't hold them to account. All right, enough of that. Have a few things to get through. Let's start off today's daily review. And of course, the first story, it's the big story of the week generally, and new details are emerging with regards to the deaths of babies in the NICU. Now there's a report that a few weeks before, approximately 3 weeks before or so, another baby, an 8th baby, died under circumstances that are somewhat similar. In fact, when you read the accounts of the mother with regards to what she was told by the hospital, was told not to worry, there's an infection, antibiotics, blood transfusions, the same sorts of processes, and unfortunately led to the same result. Now, this is one case a few weeks before. If we look at it on its own, it might not mean anything. Statistically, one case is not relevant enough to say that there is anything systemic, right? But unfortunately, a few weeks after, there were 7 cases in about 2 or 3 days, something to that extent, right? And it's difficult now for us to divorce the initial case that was not originally grouped with the 7. It's hard to separate them, to say that, no, there are different situations that's going on. Now, there is an independent probe going to be conducted by the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. The Minister of Health, he indicated as such. He said that he can't necessarily speak. We don't know exactly what the team will consist of, what they will be looking for. Information has to go from the ministry and obviously from the NWRHA and Port of Spain General to PAHO so that they could figure out what it is they're looking for. Although one would think that to some extent PAHO will know, listen, these are the bases we have to cover, right? It's deaths in NICU, it's based off of infections that occurred. We need to cover how these infections happen. How did these bacteria were allowed to manifest in the NICU? How did it spread? And to check everything that could potentially be involved in that, from sanitation procedures to the sanitation that the healthcare workers undertook every time they were going into what should be sanitized areas, right, or clean areas, and what other practices, and to some extent then on top of that, as the situation unfolds, they might need to look further into the hospital in general, depending on what they discover. This is assuming that they discover anything, and I say that because that could mean, more than one thing. It could be somehow that this really was just unfortunate fate, right? There's always a 1%, less than 1% chance that is the truth. But it's not necessarily likely to be the case. Then there's always the fact, And I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm just saying there's always the fact that somebody might try to cover their rear end, and they might not necessarily look to reveal the whole truth. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes people do that not necessarily when they're guilty of any wrongdoing, but when they're afraid that the actual events might paint them in a bad light and throw suspicion on them, even though it potentially should not, they were not the problem. But they might be afraid of becoming the scapegoat. So already we have seen communication from the Northwest Regional Health Authority that they hope to avoid unnecessary expensive litigation. Well, to some extent, the first step for any entity to do this is to have their legal department not make any mistakes. And a potential mistake, we still don't necessarily know how this is going to unfold. But if lawyers of the parents of the deceased who are looking to sue you send you a pre-action protocol letter and you fail to see it, right? This is assuming that nothing went wrong in the line of communication and that it was received by the email account. To some extent, yes, I don't know to what degree legal liability or responsibility now the onus would be on them that it was sent, that the account received it, that they have the responsibility to acknowledge it. I don't know what their legal responsibility is there, but to some extent you're trying to avoid a lawsuit. So even if you're in the right, even if you could say, well, that's not, sending it via email is not sufficient enough to say that, you know, now the onus is on us to acknowledge and respond. For all intents and purposes, you did your part, and that, to some extent, it doesn't matter. With a case like this, all right, we didn't get the letter. But at the end of the day, the lawyers have come out publicly. That's potentially their intention. That's on the table. You should be proactively crossing all T's, dotting all I's, if you want to avoid unnecessary expensive litigation. Because it might just work out that you need to settle out of court to avoid unnecessary expensive litigation, right? And there are times where you see in other jurisdictions that happens. I don't know what the NWRHA is going to do. I suspect now that they have calls that PAHO is going to conduct an investigation, the lawyers for the families might actually maybe argue we should wait to see what the results are before we commit to anything. Depending on the situation, they should have their own medical experts advising them. Of course, there should be medical experts advising the ministry as well with regards to how bad the fallout could be, because yes, the NWRHA is the health authority in charge, but the ministry also needs to independently, not just depend on PAHO, but also get its own ducks in a row. The minister did say that the families of the deceased will get information. The lawyers have made complaints that, well, they are not being told, they're not being given any information about the deceased babies, and they're not being given any medical records, and that's a problem for them, right? To what extent is this going to eventually have to play out in court? Hopefully, the minister's words that the families will get the information, and then, unfortunately, and let's not forget, we can't unring certain bells in society. The fact of the matter is, we've already seen two situations where, with regards to potential unlawful deaths in the prison service, medical records were not necessarily 100% accurate when compared to independent pathologists, independent autopsies, right? Now, I'm not saying that the NWRHA is the TNT prison service or the doctors that were involved there. I don't know which doctors were involved there. But I'm saying the possibility in this nation exists already. I cannot fault the lawyers from not having a lot of faith or trust in the NWRHA right now. Because the fact of the matter is, in our society, we don't know who is going to be willing to do the right thing, whether it hurts them or not, and who, at the end of the day, is ultimately concerned with their own career and political survival. That's just the reality of our nation. At least that's what we can see we don't see the alternatives, at least not enough, to give us confidence in order to give others the benefit of the doubt. All right. I'll pause there. There were some other topics I could go on to, but I have somewhat of a big conversation coming up next with regards to politics in TNT. Stay tuned to Talk About in WESN. We'll be right back after this.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Ariapita Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen, and I am joined by a geopolitical analyst, transformicist, Dr. Shane Mohammed, the man with all the accreditation with regards to the field that I speak about on a daily basis. I am just, folks, the know-it-all amateur. This is the academic professional. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, glad you could be up so early on a Wednesday morning. I just had to throw that one in there.
The errors of the morning. When you see the sunrise, you know to get off your bed and do what you have to do.
I myself almost was in a similar situation this morning, but somehow I was able to prevent that. It did help that I slept for approximately 12 hours or so. Now, with that said, politics in TNT. I wanted to have a discussion. We have elections coming up. We have a government that's in a very interesting position, and I'll kind of want to start with that, but also include, well, the opposition party is also in an interesting position, even before what we have seen in the last couple of weeks, right? So let me set the stage. We have a government that has won the last two general elections, right? So this is the end of their second term. And to some extent, one could argue that even throughout the second election, things weren't necessarily looking too bad. I remember in Talking Point, I was still able to say good things alongside the bad things with the government. But recently, the good things started to dry up a little bit. You know, it became harder and harder to find, like, this is something good that the government's doing, we should all be behind it. And it became a lot more apparent, these are all the things we have to criticize. Now, one of the things is, with the last two budgets, I think a common sentiment expressed by economists is the fact that, and analysts, is that they couldn't see a plan, they couldn't see a vision. And to me, there was a plan. It wasn't necessarily much of a vision, but there was a plan. It was cost cutting. It was cost controlling. It was keeping the budget under control. At what cost? With regards to a lot of areas being underfunded, and it's causing problems. Even the police now, one police station is trying to tell at a town hall meeting, look, we just don't have the resources. What happened at Carnival can't be sustained. If that's what you want, we can't always do it. And we have a point where perhaps this government is at its weakest. But the opposition has not impressed. And the unfortunate thing is they're in the opposition. Your job is easier when you're in the opposition. But even with all that said and done, despite the fact that my co-host has said that Kamala Persad-Bissessar is unelectable, of which I, to some extent, agree. She's lost 2 general elections. Usually that's when you go quietly into the night and let somebody else take over. This current government is not necessarily at a strong enough footing, and we know that people vote governments out. They don't necessarily vote the other person in. But with now internal rifts in the UNC, the whole math equation to this election, at least as of now, we have about a year again, give or take. To me, it's up in the air because I can't fault people for telling me they don't know who to vote for. So with all that said and done, now you know where I'm coming from with this. I myself am flustered, confused, concerned, worried about the future. What's your take on it just in general with what you have seen from both parties and, of course, the internal rift in the UNC?
Well, let's go with the government first, right? So normally when a government hits its second term, well, actually, whether it's first or second term, by the time it reaches its third year, they start putting things in place to position itself in line for the next general election. And to some extent, not a great extent, but to some extent, they kind of started positioning themselves in that direction as of the budget of 2023-2024. And a lot of things from that budget made us think, okay, well, there's going to be some form of implementation of measures, projects, programs that is geared towards building the economy, encouraging local investment, encouraging some level of entrepreneurial financing and that sort of thing. But it's almost as though you've seen a repeat of those very same things. Tax rebates and company exemptions and all of those things for companies that are going into IT and tech and all of those and that sort of thing. And we look around and we don't see that happening anywhere in this space. And we ask ourselves, well, I actually often ask myself, so where's the diversification of the economy? And for a government that has been in power for 8 years or thereabout, 8.5 years, where has they trumped the other government. They ran into them and talked about the lack of diversification and investment in the economy in terms of the different sectors and whatever. And we are now at a state where Trinidad and Tobago, in the leadership, from the leadership theory perspective, Trinidad and Tobago has now plateaued, and the government, all governments, regardless of which government it may be, all governments, all organizations, at some point in time of their lifespan, they plateau, which is a normal thing. But in plateauing, it gives the opportunity for a reassessment, reevaluation of where we are, what does the market look like. In terms of a government, it's the same thing. You reassess you look to reassess yourself, reevaluate, look at what you did, what you didn't do, what you can do better, and then look at your market. And the market in that regard is your population, your socioeconomic well, what would you say is, the key selling points for our stakeholders, and the stakeholders is the population. And there's really You can even look at from a business perspective, which is what sometimes you have to do as a government. Look at what are your KPIs, what are your key performance indicators, and that will then set the tone for how do you fix where the gaps are, fill the gaps, correct the errors, and redirect or reposition where you might have fallen by the wayside. And that is something that we've not seen happening or happened yet. And the whole call an election now, the government is not in any way ready to call an election. And the Prime Minister is very clear that when he does call an election, it will be done when it's due. So that goes to say that they have plans and indications that there's work to be done, there's infrastructural work to be done. They have projects that they need to complete. They definitely want to open the Sandy Grande hospital complex because they see that as an investment into that constituency where they could pull it back from going into a different direction. But infrastructural design, infrastructural fixtures does not help when people, their cost of living is very high, when young people does not have opportunities for jobs, when outside looks more lucrative than inside, when it is easier to simply pack up your bags, move your family away, sell your house, and don't look back. And that anybody, whether in government or in opposition, who does not believe that that has not been happening is very foolish and very disconnected from what the ground is. I was having a conversation just a couple of nights ago with a young person in us. I heard you talking about people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And he literally said to me, this is not the country that I envisioned that I would be living in. And I often think about moving away to somewhere quiet, away from all of this confusion, all of this calamity, all of this mess, where I don't have to worry about my cost of living, worry about safety, security, where I could maybe just live a life that's quote unquote normal. So that's it for this government in terms of the assessment of where they are. And there's a lot to be done. I will say, however, that if an election were called tomorrow, they would win again. Hands down, with less seats because they would not win Tobago. But there are seats that are held by the UNC that were very close to being flipped in 2020 towards the PNM. And that is a risk that they run because regardless of what anybody says, the PNM may be very terrible at governance, but they're very good at winning elections. And we must never underestimate their political structure and their organizational structure as a party and its effectiveness to be able to execute a successful election campaign. Again, that is what was their strength in 2020. I could write a book or we could write a journal article on how did an unpopular government win an election against Kamala Persad-Bissessna and the UNC. And it's simply because the UNC was not ready in its full capacity to win an election that was theirs to win. So the bare minimal people will come out to vote in an election if it was held in 5 weeks. And then we could safely say that 2 seats will go to Tobago and the rest will be split in Trinidad, but it will go in favor of the PNM. Because, as you rightfully stated from the onset of the conversation, is that the UNC is not ready. So, going into the UNC now, it cannot be business as usual. And the internal rumblings of the party is an unfortunate development of sorts because an opposition party, and I've said this before on this same station and I'll say it again. Why are all eyes on the opposition? All eyes are on the opposition because they're the government in waiting. the Prime Minister, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, is the Prime Minister in waiting, is the current alternative, the obvious alternative, I should say, to Dr. Rowley. And therefore, when a government is failing or has failed or has reached a level of unsatisfactory in that boxes that you tick and they're unsatisfactory in the minds of the people, then people look in the opposite direction to see what is happening there. And when you have an opposition that is disheveled, disorganized, is up its neck in confusion and commerce, then that also is a level of political instability that people may say, well, if they can't get their house in order and they can't simply listen to their own people and they are involved in a literally self-destruction of attacking each other and attacking themselves, then what would happen if we were to be in government, if we were to put them in government? And at this stage of the game, and I heard you talk about giving way to the present and looking forwards to the future. And my very simple response to that is, if we were to really and truly do that and give way to the present and look towards the future, my friend, there's going to be no future for Trinidad and Tobago, you know. So this whole notion about giving way to the present is not an option in absolutely no way, form, or fashion. There will be a very high cost of living. There will be severe taxation. There will be a limitation to the amount of money that people can spend, and a limitation to earning capacity. There's no foreign direct investment happening in Trinidad and Tobago actively and comparatively to the other countries in the region. And when we talk about countries in the region, I'm talking about across Latin America and the Caribbean. We are not attractive to multinational corporations. We have not even set the groundwork for an effective local investment for small and micro enterprises. We are not, this administration, and I will say it very blatantly, with no apologies, has deeply polarized every single institution that they control from a government perspective, so that if you are not aligned to their political organization or not known to them to be a friend of the PNM, then you are automatically excluded from even getting an interview. And that is evidenced by people talking about how difficult it is to get a job and how difficult it is to even get an opportunity to serve. So when you've polarized the country to the point where if you're not aligned and you don't speak their language and you're not seen as a friend of theirs, whether directly or indirectly, you don't have an opportunity, then we are in very deep you-know-what. So, and, you know, I look at the opposition and it is a lot of shenanigans and it is a consistent repeat of the past. I've listened to Dr. Fuad Khan talk about it, and he has a good point. Now, calling for an internal election is one thing. And I could compare it to what is happening in Tobago with the PNM internal election. Nobody had to clamor for a PNM internal election in Tobago. And that is happening within a couple weeks or so. But when you look at the list of persons that are running in the internal election, not many of the positions are contested. Some are very much uncontested, right? Whether by design, whether by orchestration, whether by directive, the point is, and I will always question why Mr. Morris is consistently holding himself back from putting himself in a leadership position at the political party level in Tobago, because his credentials and his winnability at the last election gives him that right. In relation to coming back to the UNC and Trinidad, Dr. Khan had a very good point. If you're calling for an internal election and you know for a fact that the Constitution is not right. It clearly states that the political leadership is not up for re-election until 2025, and it is up to the political leader to decide whether he or she will run the full slate, including the political leadership, in this internal election. Then, when you all talk about going into the UNC, into executive, to position the party to best position the party to win the next election, then clearly state what your intentions are. Clearly state that you're not running you're not going in there to create a coup and to hold the political leader at ransom, because every position beside the political leadership, which means deputy leaders and chairmen come down, are all up for re-election. So none of the persons that are clamoring for the internal election to be held has indicated that they are looking for chairmanship, deputy chairman, deputy political leader. But they've all thrown their guns at the political leader, indicating that she's not electable, the party is weak, she is beholden to others, and all of that. But if I were the political leader, and I am saying to myself, but the Constitution clearly says that I am not up for re-election until next year, and my party, and if I hold on the internal election next month or in June, and I sit back and I say, all you run, all you show, I will watch, look back and sit back and watch and observe. I now have to question, would you all be in a position to sit and have a conversation with me? Or, and it also is not, it's not only on, I'm not only chastising those that are opposing Mrs. Bissell-Bissessar. I am also saying, I will also say at the same time that Mrs. Bissell-Bissessar has a responsibility to listen to the people that are singing the same tune and are expressing concerns. And I was reading an article just now where from the Express where Mr. Poré said that in a meeting in San Fernando, half of his colleagues expressed their concern about what was happening in the party, and the fact that nothing was being done, she wasn't listening and whatnot. Why is there so much interest in the UNC? Bottom line, UNC is the alternative. And if the alternative is not ready and not positioned, is not looking attractive enough to go into that building behind me and govern, then the status quo will remain the same. Unless a strong, formidable, lucrative grouping of a new dynamic of people amalgamate themselves and put themselves forward and say, out with the old, in with the new, let's do something different. That's the only way that we can find a intellectual, reasonable, objective, realistic alternative and approach.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because I had a similar conversation with someone on Monday, more or less saying the same thing. I thought to myself, look, if Kamala wins with the status quo of the UNC, it's not just bad for us, it's bad for the UNC. Meanwhile, it's not that much better if Dr. Keith Rowley wins, because I feel as though neither side will face any consequence for their poor performance, right? Usually when you elect the other group in, that is an alarm bell to the incumbent saying, I lost, I need to change ship. But something interesting happened. The UNC did not change anything. If anything, they had an internal election where the challenger lost. Some people questioned the results, right? Some people who were former senior people in the UNC that we have recently celebrated as passing questioned the results, and I'll say no more about that. And I do fear that we could see a cycle where it seems as though, and Keaton has brought this up, my co-host, he's brought this up, and I think that there's some merit in this. Because it seems similar to what I've heard one global strategist speak about China, where the Politburo in China, listen, the most important thing is the party, not the country. So if the country has to suffer, well, then the party. And with the UNC, it seems as though the status quo of Kamala in charge and whoever benefits from that, I'm not going to name names, my co-host did yesterday, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's just theories of ours, right? But whoever is benefiting from the status quo, it seems as though it's more important to them to maintain that than to even win an election. And it's almost like if both parties have this unspoken kind of semi-tacit agreement, not really, but really, I know my role, you know your role, and we'll be comfortable with each other. And even if the PNM were to lose, to some extent, they're like, right, you deal with this economy, we'll rock back. And neither side is going to face any sort of consequence for what, to me, seems like one of the weakest displays of a parliamentary body or bodies. I mean, I never looked at politics as closely as I did now, but I can't imagine that past parliaments, House and Senate, the Senate is not quite as bad, particularly from the opposition, but I can't imagine that past parliaments were quite this irresponsible.
No, I actually equated the current parliament to the one of 1971, I believe, where the no vote campaign took place and the government won if not all the seats. And no, in the history of our parliament, whether it was the PNM versus the ULF, the PNM versus the NAR, and the PNM versus the BASIP and the UNC, and likewise the UNC, the government under the UNC, and the NAR versus the PNM, they were not in this position where there was such animosity and hatred and adversarial behavior towards each other. In fact, there was a level of camaraderie and there was a level of diplomacy that existed between both the opposition leader and the prime minister, between opposition members and the government members. And that has not been displayed. And a lot of times there's a very little or no talking and discussion between both parties, which is something that needs to happen. Regardless of the difference in opinions and philosophies and ideologies and the perspectives that people want, that difference, both sides have for the country, there has to be a level of discussion between the whips at the very least. When it comes to certain parliamentary procedures and practices, and even when it comes to the debates and positions to be taken on bills and that sort of thing. And we've come to realize that even when, and it became very alarming to me, in fact, when the Parliament sat for the approval of the recommendations of the Police Service Commission of the three deputy commissioners of police. And when it was time to vote for one side, for one of the nominees, and the government said no, it took the opposition by surprise, and they ended up going down the road of a division, and everybody voted no. The point is, had there been a discussion between the whips and between both sides on the nominees, then there would have been a level of not only cohesion and collective understanding and agreement, but it would have sped up the process rather than waste parliamentary time to have a whole debate and decide that. And by shock and surprise, you realize that, wait a minute, or let's say no to this person.
Because the Minister of National Security extolled the merits of the candidates, and then they all voted him no. So that whole process made no sense.
No sense. Agreed. So the thing about it is, this both sides, right? I'll tell you this. If once Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar, I mean, we have to understand, oh my God, we have to understand our limitations and what the limitations are. And I was reading, I think it was Anita Haynes that said it. And, you know, I'm not taking a side as it pertains to these issues within the party, because my question and my statement to the 5 that are making a lot of noise.
It's 5?
Is
I know
It's
Parry,
5.
Rambali, Haynes, Rodney Charles.
So Parry, Rai, Ragbir, Anita Haynes.
Rai Ragbir, okay.
Right? So the 5 of them that are, you know, on the ground making, well, whatever, wherever they are, right? My question is, what did you all expect? What really did you all expect?
Now, could it be that they tried, because I've heard stories before, people in the public service, people in various institutions, the PNM itself to some extent, you know, you try working within the system and nothing gets done because the incentive for everybody else is not there for whatever reason to say, let's do the right thing, whatever that may be. That's just a theory of mine, that they actually probably tried to do internal mechanisms and they were ignored.
No, and I don't think so. I think there's more to the. I believe that there's more to what meets the eye in the background. There's a lot of discord, and a lot of persons have been operating as silos, and there has been several fractures, and some fractures have not been known. Some factions have not been known. Some factions have literally pulled back themselves and said, "Okay, here what? Relax on yourself. Let's just observe this mess that is taking place." But the point is, what really did they expect to happen? Mrs. Prasad, at the end of the day, the National Executive operates at the behest of Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. And if she's comfortable and she's happy with what is going on and how things have been and how the state, if the status quo pleases the lady, then she's not going to move and she's not going to make a difference and she's not going to shift around. And once she sees an opposing person or an opposing opinion or sees someone that is dissident, then by all means you're already cancelled, right?
Yeah.
So Dr. Khan said in a video the other day, why don't you all do what him and former MP Gillian Lucky did by backbenching yourselves and creating you're still UNC, but backbench yourselves and, you know, caucus among yourselves, because there's a lot was exposed about not caucusing and not discussing and lack of communication, which was that was the press conference of MP Rambali. So then, what are your course of action? Your course of action now is you're going to continue at a lesser extent campaigning for an election that you may not have won. Are you going to just grumble and then just fade into the wilderness because come the next election, if nothing happens in terms of a new development in the political landscape of Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM may just go back into power? But then we also have to take into consideration another dynamic. If Dr. Rowley holds true to his word and indicates that he's not going to go back into, he's retiring after this term of office, and he's stepping back and going into retirement from active politics beyond 2025. And we take into consideration that there is going to possibly be a new leader of the PNM. Depending on who that new leader is, and there are a few names that we could throw into the mix, then my theory stands again, that the PNM may very well, most likely, go back into office without Tobago on its side, but maybe with 1 or 2 seats from the PNM, from the UNC, that have the ability to swing. And therefore, we don't know what's next.
I'm not entirely sold that the PNM is going to lose Tobago, because the THA's performance has not lived up to expectations, even if you try to view through the lens of realistic expectations for newcomers or relative newcomers. That said, I don't necessarily think that they're out of it. I don't think that the TPP as a party is dead in the water, because it just all depends, you know. People tried to predict that last election and nobody got 14-1, and it almost okay. Well, there you go. Sorry. It almost was 15-0, right? It was very close on a lot of the seats. So it's not to say, you know, Ansel Dennis is not unpopular, I think, within Tobago. Well,
he is. That's the problem. The problem is, and that's where
he almost won his seat, huh?
almost but didn't, right? Almost but didn't. But it was also a message. The vote against that 2021 vote was a vote against Tracy Davidson Celestin and a vote against Ansel Dennis's leadership as CHA Chief Secretary. And I am saying that Tobago is not going to switch back to the PNM automatically because they still believe in the THA and they still believe that there are several persons within the THA that genuinely, not that they are all disingenuous, I'm not saying that, but there are persons that they look to for strategic leadership within the THA framework and they deliver.
Okay.
And there are secretaries that are going the extra mile, that are doing their best to deliver to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I could speak to the efforts of the tourism secretary. I could speak to the efforts of the health secretary. I could speak to the efforts of and while people may see him as being very adversarial and very being the one that might be most controversial, it's all because of the portfolio he holds. But Mr. Trevor James is an experienced politician.
Right.
Right. And he comes from political stock that understands how things work.
Okay.
And he is therefore, he will borderline, he will go to the limit that he will push to the barrier and the limit that the law allows him to go to, but he will not cross it. So up to this day, there have been several questions about the work that he's doing. There's been several questions raised about the legality of the work, but there's no evidence to show and nothing that comes up to the surface that is alarming to show that this man is acting illegally. And that's the thing. One can go all the way to the borderline, but not cross the borderline. And therefore they know what and understand what their limitations are. So with that said, there are key persons within the framework of the THA that are working and doing their very best to ensure that they deliver to the people of Tobago. And if you walk around in Tobago, compared to, we are now in 2024, compared to 2022, when I was in Tobago a lot more in 22, 23, but compared to then to now, there are people who are now saying, okay, things are starting to settle down. We are seeing things happening. There are some concerns that we still have, but those concerns are not enough to convince us that they're not working, and they're not working to the best of to their ability and in our best interest.
Well,
so, the potential candidates.
The potential candidates for the Tobago seats, you think, are going to... All right, we're starting out of time, so I want to switch gears because you mentioned the PNM might have a new candidate and it might make things even better for them in the upcoming election for a new political leader, right? Although, to some extent, we kind of have to wait and see if that will actually happen. Generally speaking, two things. One, I would think, at least my opinion would be that the UNC would be better off with somebody new at the helm. With the PNM, I'm not actually entirely sure. I think there are some people who want the job. They might not necessarily make things better, at least from my perspective. Some people might, and then others who might have just as good of a chance because of the internal politics of the party could be even worse than Dr. Keith Rowley. So moving forward, you know, out of context, it's not that you're giving your opinion with regards to UNC of who you're supporting or not. Just generally speaking, am I correct in those thoughts? Would the UNC be better off if it, you know, just got a new direction and tried to rebuild itself, whereas the PNM has a harder task because that's going to be competing interests. Not all of them are going to be positive.
No. One. Let me start with the PNM first. As I said, I finished the way I started. The PNM is very good at understanding what its mandate is politically. And the PNM is very good at maintaining a great deal, a level of organization within its party structure. And They may not always agree with perspectives. They may not always agree with direction. But once a leader once the General Assembly puts themselves behind a particular leader, whether that leader is good or bad, everybody gets their ducks in a row, because the bottom line is they're going to win an election. Now, there are several people, as you rightfully say, who are aspiring to be the leader, but they may not be very good leaders. And that is something where my concept is that people must understand what their own limitations are. They may have leadership aspirations. They may see themselves in a particular space or role, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that they will make a good leader. There are within the PNM right now, I could say there are at least 3 ideal persons for leadership. I don't believe that they have a clear pathway to that role. On the other side of the fence, with regard to the UNC doesn't, and changing just the leadership of the party is not going to make a difference. If you just simply take out Mrs. Prasad Bisasa and put in anybody else, that is not going to work. The party needs an entire overhaul of the entire executive and a whole new, a realignment of its philosophies and ideologies from its early moorings. And therefore, you need a leader who understands the past, knows the present, and also has a vision for the future. And there's very few people who fits that role and who will be able to attract the larger cross-section of the society. And if those persons who fit that role, that specific role, is limited and might even be outside of the framework of the UNC at this point in time, then it will not satisfy. So just moving the head and leaving the rest of the body is not going to be, that's not going to fix it at all.
When you say outside the framework, you're speaking about potential candidates who are not actually current members, whether parliamentarians or not, active in the UNC right now?
I'm talking about persons who may be members of the UNC, but are not within the current framework of outside of the UNC's current framework.
Okay. Now, with that said, might there be any current parliamentarians in the UNC who would give you any hope that they may, if by chance, because, stranger things have happened in politics around the world, maybe not necessarily always in TNT, that might fit the bill? Or are you thinking that what is needed is the demands are so great that you're looking for something very specific and there's a tall order on that person?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, to be quite honest with you. Again, 2025 is a critical juncture. We all talked about 2020 is the mother of all elections. No. Where a lot has happened around us in the geopolitical space, from Latin America, North America, Europe, all the way back to the region, and especially in our region, there has been significant changes in the political dynamics of several islands and even in Guyana. And when we look around ourselves, just simply look around, don't have to go far. If we simply look around to what exists in the region alone, in terms of the change and dynamics that has occurred in the last 5 years, we are lagging desperately behind. And we have fallen behind with regard to our ability to be seen as a giant in the region. And that is because our politics is poor. And I could add an adjective to that, poor, but it's at its lowest point. Therefore, the UNC has to be able to pick up a mantle that transcends just its base. It must be magnanimous. And the person who leads the UNC or the persons that make up that body that leads the UNC has to be able to understand that it's not about self. It is about country at this point in time. And it is about country more than ever now. And the status quo and the socio-economic future of our people and the generations that are existing now. So, unfortunately, I am genuinely saying that some of the most lucrative persons within the framework of the UNC, who had very bright futures at one point in time to lead the UNC, are too embroiled in too many questions that are arising. And therefore, the purity of the leadership is lacking.
Well, Dr. Mohammed, we are way out of time, but I want to thank you. This is a conversation that I do want to continue, you know, for the rest of the year, basically, as we go into 2025, because I am afraid that the voting public will just treat this as business as usual. And you more or less said it just now. This cannot be considered business as usual because things are changing. We are falling behind, even by our own metrics. And if we want to get back to where we were by our own standards, we can't just be complacent. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for joining me. And we take a break now. News on the hour next.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Police seek public help in identifying deceased man found in San Juan. Government maintains confidence in energy talks with the U.S. And internationally, U.S. Treasury Secretary says Washington set to impose new sanctions on Iran. Now for the details. San Juan residents were shocked on Monday afternoon upon the discovery of a deceased man's body in a secluded area off Brazo Seco Road, La Canor Road, Lower Santa Cruz. The grim find, made around 2 p.m., was prompted by reports of a foul odor emanating from the vicinity. Upon investigations, locals stumbled upon the decomposing body concealed amidst the thick vegetation of the forest. Swiftly, authorities were alerted, prompting the dispatch of a team comprising of officers from the Homicide Bureau and the Northeastern Division under the leadership of Sergeant Rabuta. With the identity of the deceased still unknown, the police have issued a public appeal for assistance in identifying the man. Any information regarding this matter is encouraged to be reported to the authorities promptly. The government expresses confidence in the resilience of discussions concerning energy matters with American counterparts, acknowledging the inherent uncertainty of future political landscapes. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries Stuart Young articulated this optimism during a recent interview. Minister Young highlighted the ongoing dialogues with both Democrats and Republicans in the United States, as well as with public servants, emphasizing the durability of commitments made during these exchanges. Specifically, he referenced assurances received during engagements with the U.S. government regarding the license granted to TNT on October 17, 2023 by the Office of the Foreign Assets Control of the Department of the Treasury. In international news, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says Washington expects to impose new sanctions on Iran in the coming days following its attack on Israel. Israel is calling for sanctions to be imposed on Iran's missile project. Tel Aviv's foreign minister says he has written to 32 countries calling for restrictions. A wave of missiles and drones were fired from Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen on Saturday, with most being downed by Israel and its allies.
I fully expect that we will take additional sanctions action against Iran in the coming days. We don't preview our sanctions tools, but in discussions I've had, all options to disrupt terrorist financing of Iran continue to be on the table. As I mentioned, since the start of the administration, our sanctions have targeted over 500 individuals and entities connected to terrorism and terrorist financing. And since October 7th, in addition to robust Hamas sanctions, we've also acted against 117 people, entities, and vessels tied to financing of Iran's destabilizing activities, and we've acted against UAV and ballistic missile procurement networks, assassination rings, and terrorist networks. So I fully expect we will take additional sanctions action.
Well, that's it. News on the hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
And we're back here talking about the WESN show. I'm Michael Small. Opening up the phone lines, we want to hear from you, the viewer. Call in and have your say. We only had 2 topics so far for the day. It was a big conversation I had with Dr. Sheikh Mohammed over the political situation in TNT. And for the most part, there were some things that, going into it, I didn't necessarily share his opinion of. Now I'm thinking maybe I need to reassess because he made good points with regards particularly with Tobago. But all right, I will concede the fact because unlike the opinions of some here on WESN, no, I am not Tobagonian. So while I do spend some time there from time to time, I am not that well enough connected to say my opinion is going to be greater than anybody else's. If someone gives me a different view, I'm going to take it under consideration. But to some extent, most of the things he said did kind of fall in line with what I was thinking, which is why, or rather those things are why I have concerns over our future. And these are things that I hope we would be able to not just have discussions here on Talking Point, but would spread further out throughout the country. Now, with that said, there are some other things that I would, if I have time to get into, but we have Diego Martin on the line joining me. Good morning, caller. You are on the air.
Right. Hopefully the connection is good and TTST is functioning.
It's great. It's great.
Right. I want to talk about current issues, and I want to talk about the Prime Minister's unwillingness to tell us what are the benefits of his 10 million foreign trips. There's 2 in particular I want to point out that I have a concern with. The one for COP26. Remember he went to COP26 and he addressed COP26, that is in Scotland, Glasgow. Mm-hmm. He addressed the crowd that was basically filled with empty chairs. So he has to tell us what the deliverables he get from that. And then the whole fiasco with going to Howard on a private business trip to get a medal and things like that. So he has to tell us what the value and the deliverables for that. But what I want to talk about, the heinous deaths occurring in Trinidad, another beheaded, another headless body. Where are we going? 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we had one of those headless, which was some affiliated of our Minister of Health in Trinidad and Tobago. And we linked that to some serious drugs issues. I want to connect that to the 7 and they're saying it's 8 babies now. And the rush to basically temper the anxiety of the population and the parents, where I see the Minister of Health went on television basically talking about the litigation. And it tells me that his disposition is one to settle it quickly so everybody will be a win-win, including the parents of the baby who died. I want to juxtapose that where we had a commission inquiry on the deaths of 4 divers in Paria. And where we are with that, nobody rushed to see them. Nobody rushed to engage with them. There is a judgment on it based on a commission inquiry. Say it was corporate manslaughter. We haven't held the board to account for it. We're doing an investigation and hoping this investigation is open and sincere. I'm seeing that the parents and their lawyers asking for an independent investigator to find out. I want to throw this into the public domain. If the state of that hospital, because you know it's a construction site, let's not forget that there, the whole thing, that mindset, that environment, is there any way it might have contributed to the sloppiness? I'm using a harsh term there, because I believe you cannot put a hospital in the dump. No matter what you try to do, you cannot build a hospital in that area. So that is one issue. The other one is I'm hoping that they close out the Paria. I'm very, very heartbroken about how they have treated those people with contempt. They lost the lives and they were value-added activity. I'm not diminishing the little babies. The little babies might have grown to be future prime ministers of Trinidad. But these people went down into a pipeline. We still haven't heard as to what they're doing. They were doing something to help the situation of Trinidad to probably gain revenue. I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thank you, Walla. I mean, it's an interesting point. Right, to some degree, we could debate whether or not the deaths of the divers in Paria were an eventuality, or if we could have saved them with some degree of certainty, right? To some extent, we'll never know because no attempt was made. So we have no idea knowing, you know, to judge if an attempt would have been successful or not. There could have been technicalities that we didn't know of, but what makes the situation horrible is the fact that no attempt was made. Meanwhile, with the deaths of the babies, it is a situation where it could have happened even if everything was done correctly, right? There is that possibility. One of the issues with medicine just around the world is the concern about bacteria that will become resistant to antibiotics being unleashed on the population, and I believe primarily in hospitals because of the overuse of antibiotics. Now, I'm not saying that that was a factor here. I'm just saying that it's not as simple as we think. There's always a slight chance that everything was done correctly and this tragedy still happened. Not that I think that that's likely the case. Let me be clear. I will say, though, I think the politics around these two situations, the wife of the chairman of the board of Paria is who? I think his political appointment is a little bit more closer to the vest of the prime minister than the appointment of the head of the NWRHA. I mean, I could be wrong, so I have to ask, to some extent, are politics causing the two situations to be treated differently by the government? Also, I also have to ask, notice, Minister Dayal Singh was not part of what was going on in Paria, but now that he is, you know, involved in something, to some extent, you did admit you seemingly see this situation being resolved a lot quicker than how Paria was resolved. Now, there's more I could say on it, but we have Shagonas on the line that's been waiting. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
I want to start off with our last conversation when I said that the Hamas and all of those Muslim people were totally wrong because they entered people's property and committed crimes.
Yes.
And then I brought in the doctrine of hot pursuit. Now you claim that they could have different laws over there. I don't know of any country which have a law that they would allow their citizens to go into another country without provocation and commit crimes. I don't know. Anyway.
No, with that I agree. I'm just saying the technical aspects of the illegality, it will vary.
People certainly wasn't Muslim. If you look what they did, they went up there raping people and all kind of things. Islam is against adultery. So you could imagine where it is against rape. Right? So them are not Muslim, them are hooligans. I mean, what went in there from what they did. That is, and then when you see the Muslim people here in Trinidad all about calling on the government to ban Israel and whatnot, I can't understand the logic of this. They just choose a side.
Well,
because
Professor,
they follow that religion.
Professor, if I may, I will say this. I agree 100% with Israel's right to retaliate on what was an attack on its citizens. The only problem I have is how they retaliated. Take away the amount of civilians that might have been killed in their bombings and attacks. I didn't really see them accomplishing anything in how they retaliated, and that's my problem. Now, to say we and our opinion in this debate matters that much, I think we are one country that needs to get our house in order before we could tell the rest of the world, you know, what we think is humanitarian and legal justification of anything.
My house in order.
Well, as your house, but the Red House is not so much in order.
Anyway, as regards your feature speaker this morning, I thought he told me what we do, all the things wrong. I thought he was going to tell us what to do about it. Well, because I have told you all exactly what is the problem here. It's a question of law and order. We don't enforce our laws, right? And we have a system here which each minister supposed to have his ministry making recommendations to improve the law. None of these things are being done. And if they do, if there is done to some extent, like with the property tax, then they hide it, right? Those things don't help. Now we have WASA talking a set of rubbish here. WASA came up there with a plan from the Parliament, and nobody could see what is the technical recommendation. Because something like the WASA should never be bankrupt. WASA, I keep telling people, is whatever it is supposed to be based on the rental value of your property. Rental value of properties in Trinidad have escalated. How could they go bankrupt? Then they talk about government interference, and government interference will always get them to employ the partners. Now, after viewers are now we hear they're going to the offer next 200 and the top heavy. So what? Unless we see the public service thing, because the last time we talked here, a guy called in after me and he said that WASA had made a number of recommendations, but we haven't seen that. I had no doubt he was right. Okay, that is what I have to say today.
Thank you, Professor. I'll just say this, on utilizing rental value for water rates, as property tax exercise has shown, there's no objective way to definitively determine rental value for a property that is not actually currently under rent. When the owner is occupying it or rent is not being paid for whatever reason, it's subjective. That's the one thing with regards to that. If WASA is doing that, that could be why, you know, because someone has to make the valuation, and interference from multiple factors could come into play. We have Diego Martin on the line. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Small.
Morning.
Yes, I want to make comments concerning this election business.
Yes.
On the part of Dr. Rowley, election, he wasn't going to go back up, change his mind.
Yeah.
So if he wins the election, we don't know where he's standing at. So when he's talking about he's not going back up, that is just something to know there. As pertaining to Mrs. Prasad Bisal, always calling for to go, there's a flip side of that. If she goes and whoever they put there becomes leader, you must have to decipher that the people who follow her, she has a big following. Whether are they going to support the party at the elections or not. So there's a flip side of that. So there's no two ways to say change her right now. wait till election go by, if she loses, and as far as I understand it, I heard her say that, you know, she can go. But the fact is, they cannot come now and change our leadership and hope to win election. According to Mr. Mohammed this morning, he's correct for saying that they change a leader. I think she tried years, and she did well when she was there. They did a lot of wrong as well, but the good outweighs the bad. So that is what they have to look at. And the point is, but she did good for the people, and the thing that she put up and infrastructure was good. So that you have to weigh these things out. And I don't think changing her at this stage of things is a little different kind of political thing in it. And all those lawyers and them who are trying to say change her, they are suffering now because of the economy in the country. All their chambers and they're not getting kind of work they're supposed to get. So that is the thing that Mr. Ramley and so on have to understand. So, and they know where she stands, where the lawyer is concerned. Alan Ramlogan is a poor choice in anything he does, and not because he's thinking he has a track record for that. So that's just my 2 cents. You have a good day and take care.
Thank you, caller. I mean, you raised a very good point. If she's replaced, how will the voting public that supports her react? And you might very well be right. You might just need, if she loses the next election, right? Because at this point, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. If she does, then will that be enough to convince voters that they have to move on, right? And in the long run, it might not be good for the UNC, or it might be good for the UNC, but one would think, you know, having to wait to lose 3 elections in a row, that's a long time to try to then start the process of coming back in order to defeat your opposition, the party that you oppose, when the next opportunity presents itself. So I will say this, I don't know if I agree with you with regards to her performance. I don't know if I agree with you that her government's performance, the good outweighed the bad, and her performance as an opposition leader and as a political leader of a party after she got into the opposition. So let's take the PP out of it. I don't know, you look at past behavior to predict future behavior, and like to some extent though, Biden is not what he was when he was vice president, right? But now his current past behavior as president, we could extrapolate a bit more accurately. Same thing, I think, with Kamala. I don't know if it's accurate to look at when she was prime minister. That was almost 10 years ago. What is a little bit more recent with how she's managed bureaucracy and politics and public communication, it doesn't inspire confidence from me or my co-host. We have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on air.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
You know, I have to agree with the professor this morning. When I was expecting, apart from what Shane Mohammed talked about, I was looking for something a little more in depth. Not just because it seems as if he is resigned to the fact that to saying that okay, it will be the one or the next in the next general election, and that is not sufficient for this country. So I listened to some callers who seem to have this cult following behind that the UNC party, and look at who is lining up behind the UNC. They need to look at who is lining up behind the UNC and ask themselves, is this good for Trinidad and Tobago? That's what they need to ask themselves, you know. Is this good for Trinidad and Tobago? Forget about the tribe. As there's a caller sometimes called from someone who has a very interesting phrase. You know, this is about Trinidad and Tobago. I listen to the UNC Monday night meetings, you know. I do listen to the meetings. That's why I listen to conversations with the Prime Minister and whatever plenary meetings they have. And let me say this. I look for what solutions that you're offering. Do we have to wait on the UNC until the election date call for them to start to tell us how they're going to try and fix this country, or just listen to the same old. This is what the government do. This is what the government do, and this act of civil disobedience. That if I am not in power, I am going to try and disrupt the way this country is run. That is not people that are for Trinidad and Tobago. That is just as Shane said. With the whips would sit down behind the bench and have discussions before the bill comes forward. That is not happening, and that is not what we want. And I hope they're listening. I really hope they're listening, Sean. And you understand the frustration that's happening here.
Yes.
You understand this. So have a good day, Sean.
Thank you, caller. I will say this with regards to the interview. First of all, I was meaning to mention this earlier, so I'm sorry it took me this long. This is not the only one I'm going to have with Dr. Mohammed, so we're going to have follow-ups, right? But I wanted to set the stage, and to some extent, he went deep into his reasoning with regards to the current situation, why he has the views that he has. He did mention, we didn't expand into it, but he did mention the possibility of a third force needing to really get the best people outside of the PNM and the UNC, and to really make something solid, to push forward, to try to present a third alternative, which, even if it happened last year, it might still be too soon to see big results out of upcoming general election. Although I would say, and I thought this back in 2020, that the doors were open for any viable third force, viable third party, because both the PNM and the UNC to me looked weak at the time, and to some extent that trend has only continued, that downward trend. As I said in the early days of Talking Point, it seems as though there's a race to the bottom to see who could be worse than the other, right? We didn't necessarily have two political parties competing to see who could outdo each other. That's not what we see, right? Now, the thing about it with the UNC, part of what makes it difficult to finish what I was just saying, we can't just expect any party that pops up to be successful. Voters need to have a bit more confidence that you're serious. The COP was getting there, and then they blundered and they dropped the ball. Right? And we haven't had another group really push like they did. COP had a lot of support all over the country, I'm telling you. Even in my area, which is a PNM stronghold, right? There were supporters campaigning for them. So we needed to see a serious effort, more than we've seen out of any of the other parties that we've seen so far. I'm talking the NTA, the PEP, HOPE, all of them, the PDP, even the TPP, if the TPP comes to Trinidad, although by their name, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon if it does at all. Now, the thing with regards to UNC voters, they're not necessarily going to see how their party operates as a bad thing, because to some extent the PNM operates in the same somewhat tribalistic way. Now, granted, you see more East Indians within the PNM, particularly on the slate, but to some extent, this is what parties do. They try to look diverse. Their voting base is not necessarily diverse, and culturally, they don't always really hit, all of the cultural beats. But I would say that to some extent, the PNM is doing a little bit better job of at least trying, right? And like I said, they do have a very diverse slate, and that to some extent might be one of their strengths. But at the end of the day, their tribe is not a race, their tribe is a PNM. PNM supporters are their tribe. So when you kind of see tribal politics, PNM versus UNC, it's not really Afro versus Indian. PNM versus UNC. I can't fault the UNC voters that kind of saying, well, they're doing it too, we'll do it too, right? The problem, of course, is the PNM at the end of the day, they are not necessarily having all of the issues that the UNC has. Right? And I think a lot of the issues is not just the tribal politics, but also to the extent and the inability to understand, listen, at the end of the day, we could be for our people and for our supporters, right? Granted, a government should not be like this. A government should be objective and award things based off of merit. The best contractor gets the contracts. The best applicant gets the job, right? But The PNM is able to do it a little bit more successfully than UNC, and that's why I think UNC needs to try to now look at things and say, hey, we need to change, because if what we're doing, we're being outcompeted by our competitor, then we need to shake things up. We need to differentiate ourselves to offer the country a better product. And goes back to what I'm saying. I'm not seeing competition on who's better at governance, on who's better at communication, on who's better at problem solving and solutions. All I'm seeing is a race to the bottom, right? There's no vision from either side. There is no long-term strategy, strategic concepts, or strategic ideology from either side. And long-term strategy matters. Oh boy, does it matter, right? A lot of the major world events that happened in the 20th century happened in part because people did not think about the implications of them operating in their silos of this is my nation, I do what's best for my nation. They don't see the trickle-down effects of what it might force other nations to do. And then you had wars start. Wars that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. And conflict is not a thing of the past. We thought after the Cold War, peace dividends throughout the G7 countries, etc., right? Will Trinidad ever be affected by war again? Well, we don't have to be involved in a war to be affected by it. That's what Ukraine taught us. The Middle Eastern stuff with America, we kind of took it for granted. That have nothing to do with us. But Ukraine taught us, no. The world could go upside down. And if we are not capable, and if we are too weak and susceptible to external shocks, we're going to feel it like we have never felt it before. And that's one of the things that Dr. Sheikh Mohammed was warning about, that he doesn't necessarily see an obvious way forward. So as much as you might have wanted to hear solutions, unfortunately, I think to some extent his commentary today, we could go into the hypotheticals and what directions we need to take in order to try to improve things. But unfortunately, he was also kind of dealing with reality. And the reality is, unless something extraordinary happens, it's going to be either Rowley or his replacement versus Kama. And to some extent, it's going to be business as usual. And he pointed out the consequences of that. But he did warn, I mentioned at the top of the show, if we disregard the present and try to work towards the future, if we think that's a good idea. And he basically said, no, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. We can't have hope for the future if we more or less give up on the present with regards to politics. And to some extent, I can't fault him for saying that, but there's no clear, easy, obvious path to get there, right? But I think you're right. I think both party supporters do need to really take a hard look at themselves, because they are more than content going forward the way they are. And to some extent, they might even double down. As the economy gets worse, instead of a voting population, those who actually come out to vote regularly, the diehards of diehards, right? Instead of them saying, hey, we're sinking, we need to improve things, they might double down and say, things are getting harder, so we need to be more loyal to the party, we need to ensure our party gets into power, no matter what the cost, no matter what the long-term costs might be, no matter if we sell out, because me as an individual needs to be financially secure. And I'm not thinking about the country, because the country doesn't think about me. But the party gives me things, so I will support the party. And to some extent, I know white nationalism is usually as a term for racism. Let's not get it twisted. Nationalism is a word that means something, and in its literal sense, it's not all bad. Nationalism, patriotism. Yes, it could get too extreme. But we have no sense of nationalism here in TNT. Only when somebody just randomly wins a gold medal because they themselves rose to the occasion of their own individual efforts. Not because our sporting industry and ministry has all these programs in place that are so successful. We have international achievers here in TNT. But it's because of their individual capabilities, and we want to celebrate them on, oh, look how good our country is. But there's no actual collective effort There's no actual collective pride to fuel these things, to fuel the desire of a society to see us succeed. There is just people who are looking to see not what they could do for their country, but what their country could do for them. And at the end of the day, I will end where I began. One of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. And that's from a man in ancient Greece that didn't even think probably TNT existed. But it is very true here today. So, with all of the pessimism, we can still believe in TNT, but we have to make it better through our own efforts. Have a good day. Make it so, as my course always says. Show your allegiance to your republic. We will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Coming soon to WESN.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service make